the full-time mage. The extreme lightning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551, Dragon's Power, added for awards. At this time, on the Tyrant Mountain, which was mostly destroyed outside, the black dragon felt that his blocked dragon breath could actually erupt. The moment it was released, it aimed at its own scales, and then the dragon flame boomed out. Although the power of this dragon flame was still much smaller, it was also a glimpse of hope. For this, it was even more grateful to Tangmao and Apis. Originally thought that he would never be able to spit out dragon breath in this life, but he didn't expect that a human and a Medusa would not only save him, but also help him solve the biggest problem. The Black Dragon Emperor was full of gratitude for this. It didn't know that some of its dragon source power was also absorbed. Of course, the disappearance of this little power did not react to it. Even if there was a little reaction, it only thought it was the work of this damn magic fly. In the throat area of the Black Dragon Emperor, Tangmao felt that he could not withstand the cremation at this time, but Apis still had no intention of retreating, and she was not much better than Tangmao. Tangmao even wanted her to return to the contract space, but Apis refused. It did not agree to this. After all, if she left, Tangmao's IQ would probably be noticed if she wanted to gain more power. Even if the Black Dragon Emperor's source power is sufficient, this power is an important factor in maintaining life for a long time. So, once discovered, who knows what terrible things the Black Dragon Emperor will do. Even if he has been tossed for a long time, the Black Dragon Emperor is still the Black Dragon Emperor, an unrivaled top emperor. Therefore, Apis must not only let the Black Dragon Emperor feel rescued, but also let Tangmao get some of its source power. Rumble. Rumble. Even if it is just a small cut, the impact of this dragon flame is still terrifying. Tangmao looked at Apis and said, "Apis, what should we do? I'm afraid this flame will last for a long time. What can we do? Just bear with it. It's impossible to go out now." She was also being roasted in this scorching space. Moreover, as the temperature continued to rise, the air became a little thin. This was one of the main reasons why Apis didn't let Black Dragon shut up. Fortunately, Black Dragon was also cooperative. The fire wave slowly cracked the skin, but it still didn't mean to stop. Fortunately, Yangji and Zunu, one ice and one fire, one resisted and the other forcibly dispersed the flames, and with the resistance of this group of magic flies, the situation did not become more serious. After this fire wave lasted for half an hour, Tangmao's fire magic had been completely consumed. In the end, if it weren't for Zunu and Yanji, he couldn't stand it at all. But at least he resisted it after all. How is Apis? After Tangmao seemed to feel that the temperature had dropped a little, he looked at Apis behind him and asked, "I'm fine." Apis's fair and delicate skin was burned red by the fire wave, but her body was not bad, so she didn't faint. Then she said weakly, "Quickly, take advantage of now, to eliminate these magic flies." Tangmao said helplessly, "My fire magic energy has been used up." "Are you stupid? There is so much fire element, don't you know how to absorb it?" Apis said helplessly. Tangmao paused, and then he realized that the fire element energy here was indeed full to bursting. In addition, the Killing Jade also suddenly started, as if the dragon source power just now poured into the fire galaxy. In an instant, the galaxy was boiling, and the galaxy that was about to dry up was actually full very quickly. Now Tangmao understood why Apis insisted on coming in by herself. It turned out that she was here to blackmail the dragon source power of the Black Dragon Emperor. What if the Black Dragon Emperor finds out that we swallowed it? However, although he knew it, he didn't dare to do it. After all, now they are in the mouth of this big guy. The reason why these magic flies can't die is because of its dragon source power, so even if you absorb some, it won't find it. At most, it will be weak for a while, but even so, it won't think that you are absorbing its dragon source power. Apis continued. "So you insisted on calling me in, just to get its dragon source power. suddenly found that Apis not only knew how to improve herself, but also knew how to find suitable and sufficient resources for herself. No wonder, she said, that there is an opportunity to break through the superclass here. If the Black Dragon Emperor told her this himself, Tang Mao would not believe it, even if he was beaten to death. After all, this source power was taken away, it would not be able to recover its full peak strength for a long time. Of course, even so, it is still a huge existence that no one dares to provoke. At least Sulu has no second chance to find a way to subdue it. The Black Dragon Emperor is not a fool. After being cheated once, can it be cheated a second time? With a lot of magic energy, Tang Mao once again drew the constellation. For some reason, the magic flies that were difficult to kill just now suddenly rushed out of a fire dragon, and a large number of them turned into nutrients and fell into the body of the Black Dragon Emperor. At this time, Apis hurriedly said, "Take advantage of now, absorb the source power." Tang Mao hurriedly summoned a Kilin Jade. Kilin also knew the importance of this source power and absorbed it greedily. About 3 minutes later, Apis said, "Continue to kill." He didn't waste words and did it completely according to what Apis said. After all, he had tasted the sweetness, and Apis obviously wouldn't lie to him. Constellation Link, the fire dragon rushed out again. Under the continuous output of high-level fire magic, not only did he not reduce any magic power, but it became more and more full. Even the fire system has explored the edge of the superclass. This has a huge reward, and it is naturally very fast to eliminate these magic flies. Even, he ignored the disgusting smell here. He was completely in the killing. Another half an hour passed, and the demon flies were finally solved. The energy in the Kilin Jade seemed to be enough for him to advance. Tang Mao took Apis out of its stomach and flew out. When he came out, the Black Dragon Emperor still opened his big mouth. When he saw Tang Mao and the other two come out, the Black Dragon Emperor roared excitedly. Even though he was a little weak now, his throat finally didn't feel blocked. After expressing his gratitude, the Black Dragon Emperor finished burning the alien scale and randomly handed it to Tang Mao. Then he roared a few more times and flew towards the depths of Tyrant Mountain. Chapter 552, Smaller. After the Black Dragon left, Apis explained, the Black Dragon Emperor said that, as long as you make its scales into magic tools, it will be able to sense it whenever it comes near here. If it needs help, it will not refuse. You didn't invite it to go with us? Tang Mao just told Apis when he was in the cave, hoping that she could pull the Black Dragon to her territory. Although its body is very large, it can still live in the large mountains outside Yuxu Town. With such a big bodyguard, Yuxu Town's safety value will definitely be the best in the world in the future. It is not a dragon from your east. Moreover, according to what it said, there is also a creature in the east that is not weaker than it. If you step into it casually, you will wake up the other party. With its current strength, it can't be provoked at all. Apis shook his head and said, you have to know that the battle between the two emperors is enough to destroy the world. Do you think your land can withstand it? Not weaker than its existence? Tang Mao's focus was obviously not what Apis said later, but he was just curious about what kind of horrors there were in their country. The Black Dragon Emperor is definitely the top combat power in this world. It has existed for who knows how many years. What kind of behemoth is this creature that makes it feel afraid? Humph, this world is huge, so huge that you humans can't fully understand it. Although Apis has accepted her fate, she still disdains humans because of her noble bloodline. Tang Mao was too lazy to correct her bad habits. Anyway, what's wrong with being as noble as Medusa? Don't you have to kneel down and play the flute every day? In my lifetime, I must see the wonders of this whole world and even the wonders of other planes. Hearing what Tang Mao said, Apis was full of disdain again. You humans only have a lifespan of 100 years. If you want to set foot in every corner of this world, I'm afraid you have no chance. If you keep hitting me, I'll open the door for you tonight. This little snakeskin, give in a little and get excited. How can I continue to spoil him? Sure enough, after this, even if Apis was very unhappy, she just hummed a few times in dissatisfaction. She was not afraid, she just simply didn't like that long thing. After Apis shut up, Tang Mao took her back to the contract space. After all, she had consumed a lot in it before. Such a hot wave of fire, even if it was directed at them, was enough. Even Yanji and Zunu were resting now. Then, Tangmao took back the extremely hot scales, lifted up the unconscious Norman, opened the wings of wind and left here. The continuous mountains along the way turned into a river of gravel. Moreover, there was almost no life in this area, just like a dead land. After flying for a while, it was already late at night. Tangmao came to a small island near the Mediterranean Sea, where he felt the location of Fengji. Even though it was already night, there were still many tourists here. It seemed that the Mediterranean Sea was the only calmest sea now. Tangmao found Muningsu soon after he arrived. After almost a day of separation, it was obvious that Muningsu was also worried about him. Who is he? After making sure that Tangmao was fine, Muningsu asked with a sigh of relief. His name is Norman, an instructor of the Parthenon Mountain, and the brother of the little fox Asheruaya. Tangmao introduced what happened to him, and the roar of the black dragon and the powerful thunder destruction magic from there before. Muningsu said, and said with some fear, I thought you fought with them. Yes, we fought, and it also destroyed Sulu's ceremony. The black dragon was saved by me. Tangmao told the truth. After all, Muningsu is now in control of Yuxu town, so I have to remind her. Muningsu paused, then continued, no matter what you do, I believe you, but the sea outside Yuxu town has not been peaceful recently. Especially after Baksha was injured, the sea monsters in the sea area have come to provoke every now and then. Although Baksha is the supreme monarch, its strength has been greatly damaged, although it was rescued once. But last time, when it was guarding the coastline, it was severely injured again. If it wants to recover, it will take years. Of course, if there is the source of power left by other totems of the Xuanwu tribe after their death, its recovery speed will be different. So, speaking of it, the matter of finding the totem at the moment is still quite urgent. I know. I will return home after I deal with his affairs. As for the question of fighting at sea, I suddenly thought of something. As he said that, Tangmao took Muningsu's hand and flew high into the sky without paying attention to Zhao Fengji who was eating Arwu. Arwu and Norman who fainted here. There were no powerful mages on this island. Even if there were, they were only some mid-level mages. Although Zhao Fengji might not be able to deal with them, it would be no problem for Zhao Feng to drag them. And this time was enough for him to rush over. After flying high into the sky, Muningsu asked in confusion, what are you doing here? Do you see that forest? Tangmao pointed to a relatively primitive dense forest in the distance, after taking Muningsu up into the air. This dense forest is connected to a semi-enclosed bay. Because there are some demon trees growing in this plant forest, the villagers strictly prohibit villagers and guests from entering. Muningsu looked at the place Tangmao pointed to and thought it was beautiful, but she didn't understand why he still wanted to play romance with her at this time. Question mark? And when she looked carefully, she suddenly discovered these blue plants did not grow on sand, soil, or rock formations, but directly in the ocean. The water in the bay was particularly calm, and the moonlight was bright, making the bay look like a beautiful moonlit pool, with a bit of beautiful blue. The trees standing on the sea, under the illumination of some glowing fireflies, actually revealed a kind of glass-like fantasy blue. The most important thing was that she seemed to see the night blue sea water slowly flowing on the trunks and branches. What kind of tree is this? It can actually grow in the sea. Can it be planted somewhere else? Muningsu asked immediately after discovering that she had found a different place. There is a kind of unpalatable fruit on this tree. As long as you find its core and throw it into the sea, no matter where it is, a large area of trees will grow in a few years. Tangmao nodded, and then said, I saw this in an ancient book, and I just came here and found it. Muningsu was slightly excited. This blue tree can grow on the sea surface, which means that they can form a forest that is more conducive to the formation of magicians in some places, where the magicians of Yuxu town are at a disadvantage in battle. In this way, when facing some special sea monsters, there will be no heavy casualties. This is simply a treasure from heaven. Moreover, if planted on a large scale, these trees can form a huge blue marine protective forest in the East Sea of Yuxu town, blocking some overly intense tides, and slowing down the speed of the sea monster's large-scale advance. The two did not waste time and hurriedly collected the fruits here. In a moment, they cleaned up the place. Anyway, no one eats this kind of fruit, and it will fall off after the season is over. It is a waste to leave it here, so it is better to be taken away by them. In fact, once there are enough fruits of this tree, it will be a great help to the country's coastline. Tang Mao didn't think about this before, he just thought about his own little piece of land. But after listening to what Muningsu said, Tang Mao realized that it seemed that his vision was too small. In the whole of China, there are countless elite mage armies on land, but there are very few naval mages. The main reason for the failure of guarding the coastline is the lack of naval mages. This cannot be blamed on the country's education problem. After all, the sea has always been calm. Even if there are demons attacking, it is only a small group of demons. But who would have thought that the coastline would suddenly rise, and there would be so many sea monsters launching an attack on humans? It is not easy to train a group of elite naval mages in a few years, but it seems that there is hope to plant a marine forest protection zone in a few years. If I take this back to Shaozeng, he will be very happy. Chapter 553 Heading to the Holy Mountain. After collecting enough seeds nearby, Tang Mao and Muningsu returned to Fengji's place. Little Fengji looked aggrieved at this time, and her two little eyeballs seemed to have turned into soft and broken eggs. Yai when she saw Tang Mao, she ran into his arms with a wrong cry. As if she was abandoned. What are you afraid of? You are not as generous as your sister Yanji in this regard. Tang Mao looked at her aggrieved little appearance and thought of Yanji when she was young. She was just eating something, but her father didn't want it. Even if she was left there and waited for her to come back, as long as she had enough food in her mouth, she didn't react at all. But this one, it rubbed and rubbed, as if it had suffered a lot of grievances. With Tang Mao's patient coaxing, it slowly recovered, but the little baby voice of complaint continued to come out of its mouth. Muningsu looked at this scene, and the corners of her mouth rose unconsciously. Her smile instantly attracted the attention of all the males nearby. Tang Mao didn't care about these eyes. After all, his wife was excellent, so why not let others envy her? Then he walked to Muningsu, hugged her in his arms, and gave her a long kiss. Pa. At this moment, I don't know how many people were heartbroken. Muningsu didn't like to get close to Tang Mao in such a public place. But often at this time, she had no resistance. This dead man has a BT hobby. As long as she doesn't follow him, today is destined to be another sleepless night. It was fine before, but after seeing him who seemed to be strengthened, Muningsu thought it was better to endure it. After all, there was still Norman waiting to be treated here, and I believe Tang Mao would not waste too much time on such things. Sure enough, seeing Muningsu's cooperation, he remembered that Norman was still fainting here. Norman would be fine, even if he stayed here all night. However, the reason why he stopped was because he wanted to take Norman to the Parthenon mountain. Asheruaya, the little fox, was still waiting for him. So, he injured it. Ahem. In order to show that he was not unable to do it, Tang Mao said, although I really want to watch the moon with you here, he still needs treatment. I will take him to the Parthenon first. You should return home early tomorrow morning. Muningsu's face was slightly red, and she took a step back slightly before saying, I know. Looking at her current state, she is definitely a beauty who brings disaster! Exclamation mark. However, in order to let Asheruaya get the lesson she deserves, he injured it. He carried Norman on his back, then called back Zhao Fengji, and Tang Mao left. After Tang Mao left, Muningsu turned around and went back to her residence. There is no way. I just felt a little pinched. Well, I feel a little uncomfortable now. I need to go back and sort out my state. As for the tourists on this small island, any man, even the female tourists around him are not bad, but they still look absent-minded. But they dare not chat with them. After all, Tang Mao's wings of wind almost come at a touch. At this age, high-level magic can almost be achieved at such a speed. The real strength is probably even more terrifying. For them, a high-level magician is already very scary. After all, most people here are ordinary people, or mid-level magicians. I don't know if it's because of anger that Asheruaya fanned Muningsu to death without authorization, So the speed is fast, or because of the longing for her plump body. I rushed from the Mediterranean to the Parthenon and brought a fainted Norman, but this time the speed was faster than any time before. Inside the temple on the Parthenon mountain, a beautiful woman who makes people forget to breathe stood at the window and looked into the distance. But today, her face was not as confident and calm as usual. Instead, she looked a little worried. At this moment, a maid suddenly ran in a panic, and Ashurua looked back when she heard the voice. But before the maid could speak, Tangmao had already dragged Norman in. With Norman's relationship, none of the knights of Parthenon stopped him. Obviously, even if he fainted, Norman still had great prestige, which is why Tangmao, a man who was not liked by the Parthenon god mountain, could come to the residence of the goddess candidate so easily. Of course, this was originally reported by a maid, but he was obviously not a patient person. The most important thing was that some sages behind were still rushing here, and he didn't like to talk nonsense with them, so he came in by himself. Looking at Ashurua wearing a pair of cute and intellectual silver-rimmed glasses, it just modified her small and beautiful cheeks. Even wearing a solid-colored sling dress, a long dark brown hair, and a pair of simple wedge heels. It was a very ordinary dress, but it was still full of attractive flavor. Ashurua looked at Tangmao and didn't know what to say for a while. He didn't know if this man came to ask for punishment or, however, seeing that he just broke in, he should be asking for punishment, right? In fact, Ashurua already knew that Tangmao went to find Muningsu. After all, the Blue Dusk Mountain was blasted into half by the destructive thunder element. The Jingshan Mountain that was once good was just ruined. With that violent means, it can be imagined how angry Tangmao was. So she has been very confused these days. I don't know if Tangmao will break up with her because of this. Of course, she still wants to know what position she can occupy in Tangmao's heart. But now seeing him rushing up like this, as if to ask for punishment, she is very disappointed and lost. Bang! Just when Ashurua's mind was full of joys and sorrows, Tangmao threw Norman, who he brought up, to the ground. He was probably the only one who dared to treat the instructor respected by all the knights of Parthenon like this. After hearing the noise, Ashurua looked up stupidly, only to see Norman covered in wounds. Although he was not dead yet, he was only a few breaths away, right? This Ashurua knew that Norman went to Tyrant Mountain, but she didn't know what happened in Tyrant Mountain. After all, it just happened. Even if she had great magical powers, she wouldn't be able to understand the inside story so quickly. I rescued your brother, but he is hanging on for a breath now. Go find someone to treat him quickly and deal with those annoying guys behind. I'm going to take a shower first. After he finished speaking, he walked in, not treating himself as an outsider at all. There was no way. When he arrived at Ashurua's fragrant house, he realized how bad he was. In this situation, how could he have the nerve to kiss her? Chapter 554. Ashurua's inner struggle. When Ashurua came back to her senses, Tangmao had already run inside. She looked at the waitress and said, "Go and tell the people in the Knight's Hall to call Instructor Norman to be healed." Although Norman was seriously injured, fortunately Tangmao had given him some medicine first, and he was in the Parthenon, so even if he seemed to be on the verge of death, he was actually fine. After all, the treatment methods of the Parthenon are the most famous in the world. The waitress hesitated for a moment, looking at Ashurua and Tangmao who walked into her room, a little hesitant, as if she wanted to say something. What? Ashurua was a little dissatisfied when she saw that she didn't move. "Your Highness, that man," the waitress spoke, but she felt a little timid and looked at Ashurua hesitantly. Although she didn't say anything, how could Ashurua not understand what she wanted to express? "Do I need to report my affairs to you?" Ashurua said again. "Your Highness, please forgive me." Upon hearing this, the maid knelt down on the ground in a panic and hurriedly admitted her mistake. There was no way. The Parthenon mountain was different from other places. As a candidate for the goddess, it was like a princess in ancient times, with an extremely noble status. So, seeing Ashurua angry, the maid was naturally very scared. "Okay, go down." Ashurua would not do anything to her. After all, this maid was definitely the most loyal person to her. She had been with Ashurua since she was a child. As Wente's adopted daughter, she was a favorite here since she was born. Just like fighting for the position of goddess, Ashurua could be pushed to this position, even if she did nothing. The heart was also an advantage of status. In addition, the one who got the biggest benefit from Yazisha's conspiracy this time was Ashurua. However, even if she became a goddess, she still acted on her own. In fact, her reputation in the entire Parthenon might not be as good as Yazisha. Not long after the maid left, someone else came over. It seems to be the female sage of the temple. However, the arrival of these people was easily repelled by Ashurua. After all, Norman's affairs are equivalent to the affairs of the entire Parthenon knights. The knights here, no matter who they are loyal to, still worship and listen to Norman more. Because he is as outstanding as the Holy Sun Wente back then. Although he is not as good as him, his status in the Parthenon is also very high. Of course, even so, Tangmao's affairs here still made some people who sang against Ashurua express dissatisfaction. But she didn't mean to give an answer to this. And they couldn't do anything. After all, maybe they saved Norman and stayed to recuperate? Even if there would be rumors, Ashurua obviously didn't care about them. After sending these people away, Ashurua lost her previous majestic appearance. Even like a child who did something wrong and was afraid of being blamed. There was no way. When she met Tangmao, she saw his extraordinariness, but she just thought that he was just an ordinary person among many geniuses. After all, Ashurua had seen too many genius boys. However, when they met again, this man dared to be frivolous to her and looked like a gangster. At that time, Ashurua looked down on Tangmao. There were even a few times when she wanted to teach him a lesson. After all, this dead man was too arrogant. The game of the government obviously gave her a chance. But the embarrassing thing was that at the moment of the game, she lost. Not only did she not win against Tangmao, but also Muningsu. Strictly speaking, she did not win. At that time, her pride was somewhat hit. But then the day when the Parthenon mountain was in chaos. It was also that day that she discovered Yazisha's plan and then was chased by Ruler and others, but he appeared again. The most important thing is that on that day, Tangmao provoked the Holy Court, which no one in the world dared to provoke. This sentence would make people die, but on that day, it actually failed. Although they later announced to the public that they let Yazisha go because of a conspiracy, the people on the sacred mountain are not blind. The death penalty, one of the most powerful in the Holy Court, was actually beaten back to the Dark Plane by Tangmao. Ashurua has high standards, but it happened that Tangmao completely occupied her fantasy of choosing a partner. Of course, the only bad thing is that this man is more fickle. This time, she made her feelings clear, and he was about to pounce on her. Ashurua was not reluctant to hand herself over, but she was a little afraid in her heart that she would not be cherished after being obtained by Tangmao. Although she said that she didn't care, she obviously didn't think so in her heart. After all, she was also a conservative woman, but she was just a little stronger in talking. Hey, how long are you going to stand outside? Don't you have anything to say to me? Just as Ashurua was reminiscing about the past, Tangmao's voice suddenly came from the house. As soon as Ashurua heard him ask this, she knew that what was coming had come. I just knew about what Muningsu was investigating again, and gave her a clue. And I also told her that it was not something she could handle. Ashurua could not help, but slowly walked over and said weakly, "This kind of little thought will be rare in the future. Do you know that because of you, I have become a thorn in Sulu's side this time?" Ashurua paused and asked in confusion, "Why would he regard you as a thorn in his side? That Bashamu is just a chess piece that can be eliminated at any time." She had also investigated, and this Bashamu is an unforgivable person. Even if Sulu's men use him, they will never fulfill their promises in the end. Moreover, after this matter is over, it will be his death. Even if Tangmao kills the other party, he should not be regarded as a thorn in the side, right? Listening to Ashurua's speculation, Tangmao really admires that he is another master of playing politics. It is estimated that such things, like them who live in a place of power struggle, can see through it at a glance. It is this kind of unforgivable criminal who feels that he has been appreciated and has a chance to turn things around. "I helped your brother and saved the Black Dragon." Tang Mao continued to say something shocking. What? Ashirua's eyes lit up slightly when she heard that the black dragon was not contracted. Obviously, she also has a special feeling for the black dragon. Chapter 555. Opportunity lost by talking badly. Ashirua went directly to the bathroom, and regardless of Tang Mao's situation, she hurriedly asked, "How did you do it?" Norman unexpectedly destroyed a ceremony, and then held back a bunch of masters of the Asian Magic Association. I took advantage of him to help the Black Dragon escape. This time, the entire Asian Magic Association suffered heavy losses. Tang Mao replied. So, Austin was not contracted by Sulu? Ashirua did not listen to Tang Mao seriously, and opened her mouth again to confirm. Tang Mao was a little speechless, but still nodded and said, "That's right, but because of the magic flies that rushed into its throat, it needs to recuperate for a while." Great, great. Ashirua was a little emotional. When the Black Dragon Emperor was targeted, she was not indifferent, but she understood that her strength was almost too much worse than Sulu and half of the senior executives of the Asian Magic Association. Of course, when she got the news that Sulu was going to target it, she also thought about telling it. But the Black Dragon Emperor didn't recognize her at all. So, she could only choose to stand by and watch. If she was really cold-blooded, she would not have gone to Tyrant Mountain in the first place. Not only did I help you save the Black Dragon, I also saved your brother, Little Hoof. How are you going to thank me? Tang Mao said meaningfully, lying on the jade stone next to the bathtub. Norman was rescued by him, and came to Ashirua first. No matter what, even if he did not clearly support Ashirua in the future, he would not choose to support others. Moreover, the two are siblings. Whether it is Yazisha or Yixingsha, I believe they will not choose to invite him again. Of course, he is not the kind of person who likes the team, but at least the Parthenon Knights will give Ashirua more rights. Don't you blame me? Ashirua did not have any intention of returning the favor, but asked the question deep in her heart. Strange, but the death of that Bashamu has made me calm down. When he came here before, he didn't know what he was thinking, but after arriving here, Tang Mao was sure that he was completely mean. However, his face suddenly changed and said, "But, if there is a next time, I will never forgive you. If this little hoof wants to kill someone, it is really not difficult. All kinds of traps are really hard to guard against, and more importantly, her sources of information are too wide. There are some things that even he doesn't know, but Ashirua knows them. For example, the restrictions on elemental pets. If Ashirua hadn't told him, he would never know that there are restrictions on them. But in fact, it is normal. Yanji and Zunyu can be promoted to the realm of monarch in the past few years, thanks to the care of the killing jade in his body. At first, he really didn't notice this, but recently, seeing Xiao Fengji's rapidly growing strength, he immediately understood. Resources are one aspect, but the assistance of Killing Jade is also a major reason. So he had to remind this woman, which was simply asking for trouble. Ashirua looked at Tang Mao and said, "You didn't lose your temper with me, because you were reluctant to leave. Is it very important?" Very important. Perhaps, for Tang Mao, this is indeed nothing, but it is really important to her. She also lacks a sense of security. You can understand that I'm more greedy for you, and for a long time. Tang Mao did not admit or deny, but said half truthfully, "Oh, then goodbye." As soon as she heard what Tang Mao said, Ashirua turned around and was about to leave. There was no intention of discussing at all. Seeing that she was going to run, he naturally couldn't agree. What a joke. I came to Parthenon at full speed, not to treat Norman. Moreover, the imagined little fox is not like this! Exclamation mark. This is not right. However, before he could react, Ashirua had already left and went out of the house directly, as if she had no nostalgia at all. Tang Mao ran to the door in a bathrobe and said dissatisfiedly, "You fox, what do you mean? Hehe, I think you should continue to be greedy, so that you won't forget me." Ashirua turned around and smiled charmingly. "You and me." Tang Mao didn't know what to say for a while. It was also this broken mouth, and I didn't know what to say. Say that you like it. Say that it's important. Isn't it a perfect home run today? Exclamation mark. This woman is obviously not joking, and she turned around and walked downstairs. Seeing this, Tang Mao hurriedly took a set of clothes and put them on. As for his own set, he didn't have time to deal with it. He came to Ashiruaya, not just to fire. There is another more important thing, that is, the strange scale given by the Black Dragon Emperor. If such a perfect dragon scale is used to make armor magic tools, Parthenon is obviously the best choice. However, when he hurried down, he saw Ashiruaya sitting there sipping tea without any hurry. How could she look like she was going out? Obviously, he was fooled again. Dead fox, I tell you, you will really regret this. Tang Mao said dissatisfiedly. How could it be? I believe I will keep you craving it. Ashiruaya raised her eyebrows and said softly. He was already quite angry, and her hook was like a volcanic eruption. But before he could move, Ashiruaya said, before in the city, it was your best chance to succeed. You didn't cherish it, but now it's in the Parthenon. Are you sure you want to force it? Tang Mao, who had just approached, paused for a second after hearing this, and finally he gave up. How could he do such a low-level thing? If you have to do this, then there is really no chance for us. After Tang Mao calmed down, he took out the alien scale and said, this is the alien scale given to me by the Black Dragon Emperor. I want to make a set of armor magic tools. It shouldn't be difficult, right? Is this Austin's dragon scale? Ashiruaya was stunned. Obviously, she didn't expect that Tang Mao would get such a gift. That's right. Looking at the exotic scale that had been refined and only needed processing, Ashiruaya said again, aren't you afraid that I will take it for myself? In this world, no one who dares to take my things for himself has been born yet. If he had said this in the past, he really wouldn't dare to be so arrogant, but now he is about to become a superclass person in the 3 series, and the demon beads can also be used. With the help of Fengji and Apis, and Zhao promotion, how can he not be arrogant? You are the most arrogant person I have ever seen. Maybe in the future I will be someone you will never get in your life. Tang Mao said dissatisfiedly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 556, the bottom line that can be shaken at any time, rewards and extra chapters. The more Tang Mao was like this, the more Ashiruaya felt that it was necessary to keep him hanging. After all, what is easy to get is never cherished. Of course, she was not giving him any benefits. After Tang Mao just finished saying this, the zipper was unzipped. After all, if I really made myself unattractive, what would this dog thing do? If he was not greedy? Well, just now, he looked like you can't get me, but the next moment, that soft lip. TSK. Sure enough, Tang Mao's bottom line has always been so easy to shake. More than half an hour later you are still a human. Ashiruaya looked at Tang Mao with dissatisfaction and said helplessly. Tang Mao, who was holding back his breath, would not pay attention to her. He reached out and pressed the back of her head and then continued. Although it was very awkward, he was already exhausted just by the different feeling at the beginning. He could drag it on for so long, but he had to grit his teeth and persevere. Who would talk to her now? After finally persisting for nearly 10 minutes, a puff sound of deflation came out, which made him let the little fox go. Pop pop pop, you're going to die. Ashiruaya, who was relieved, looked at Tang Mao with shame and anger. How can you spit casually? This will damage your image as a candidate for the goddess. Tang Mao, who was now slightly satisfied, did not feel uncomfortable at all. Moreover, you should know that it was not Apis who was controlled by the contract. It was the candidate on the Parthenon mountain. The most important thing was that she was the adopted daughter of Wente, who made a sensation all over the world. She was a noble woman like a princess. She was willing to serve, even if it was just once, even if it was only half an hour. It still made people feel endless aftertaste. Satisfied. If you are satisfied, get off the mountain. Although Ashiruaya was willing to give some benefits, it did not mean that she was willing to accept this nutrition. What kind of status did she have? Being able to do this was already a great privilege. but this dog thing actually fed her mouth full of it. It was a wave of poisonous milk. How could Ashurua not be angry? As for men, after satisfying their cravings, they will naturally give in various ways. After all, women at this time will always feel very aggrieved. How can they not give in? If they don't give in, will there be a next time? Moreover, the most important thing is that he hasn't eaten yet. It's just to quench his thirst. So, at this time, no matter how big Ashurua's complaints are, he has to indulge her. Even if he doesn't indulge her, he has to give in. In short, Tangmao is now a typical silence is gold. Of course, if there is such a time when he can still indulge you in various ways, then there is no need to think about it. It's either because they are used to being older or they are used to making a living by doing this after Ashurua vented her anger. Okay, get out now. I'll stay here for a few more days. Remember to send me the armor and magic tools after they are made. You know, I have a lot of troubles. Tangmao got up and walked out. Of course, before leaving, he didn't forget to give instructions. However, after seeing Ashurua with a sullen face, he decisively shut up and left. This little fox might really take the alien scale for himself, or choose to build a set of top grade armor magic tools for himself. This is not what he should care about now. Although the strength will increase a lot after adding a magic tool. But even without this magic tool, he has still come to this point. If a set of armor magic tools can tell whether Ashurua's feelings for him are true or not, then it is obviously worth it. When Tangmao left, he had no obstacles along the way. Although many of the high level people here don't like him, the Knights of the Knights Hall put aside the past because he saved Norman, the man they mysteriously admired. Without the Knights to stop him, he naturally had a smooth journey down. After arriving in the city, Tangmao went to the hotel where he had stayed before. Because it was already early in the morning, almost everyone had gone to bed. Tangmao first went to the residence of Mo Fan and Zhao Manian, but found that the two were not in the hotel at all. Mo Fan was afraid that he had secretly gone to find Yi Xingxia again. Zhao Manian, a bastard, no need to think, he should have gone to spend money and drink. As for Mu Bei, Tangmao thought about it and decided to forget it. He was just an old sullen man with nothing to say. Then he came to Appis's room. Speaking of which, he should have a conversation with Apis first, otherwise he would have to explain to Hidi and the others tomorrow when they asked about Appis's whereabouts. Although it was okay to say that it was a contracted beast, Apis didn't know why she didn't want them to know about it. Perhaps Bran and Hidi's kindness to her was from the heart and without any intention, right? If it was Apis who had not been contracted, she would definitely disdain to accept the kindness of two humans. After all, she was a Medusa of noble blood, and she would not experience any human suffering, so naturally she would not have anything to do with them. However, because of the contract with Tangmao, she felt the pampering care of the two young ladies. There was even a moment when she felt that there was nothing wrong with being a quiet, gentle and weak beautiful girl. Then you should say it like this tomorrow, and don't let it slip, otherwise I will never let you go. After talking, Apis looked at Tangmao and said, okay, if you really like them, you can go and practice with them in the Alpine Academy for a while. Seeing that Apis liked them, Tangmao continued, I won't go. Apis' eyes lit up at first, but then she shook her head. Why, you can't bear to leave me? Tangmao naturally saw her hesitation, but he knew why. After thinking about it, if I guessed correctly, Queen Mother Medusa should be on her last legs now. Without the deterrence of Queen Mother Medusa, her two sisters who divided the power of the Medusa clan would definitely get rid of the threat of Apis first. Of course, they might not. After all, Apis was just a little weak, but not seriously injured or anything. But she still wouldn't take the risk. Who can't bear to leave you? I just don't want them to be implicated. Apis snorted. Hidi and concubine Bran describe the good of Alpine Academy every day, and Apis actually wants to go there for a visit. However, she knew her own situation, and she didn't want to cause trouble for the two of them. Aren't you afraid that I will be implicated? Although she knew what Apis meant, Tangmao was still a little puzzled when she heard her say it. If you are afraid, don't provoke me. I will leave at night if I cancel the contract now. Apis retorted. Tangmao lowered her head and pecked her little face lightly, saying, "Then I really can't bear to leave. Get lost." Apis was a little convinced by this sudden shamelessness. "You haven't given it an explanation today. How can you let me get lost?" Tangmao pointed to the bottom and said. Although Ashiruo got some sense of accomplishment, it was just a sense of accomplishment. But it didn't mean that it had no ideas. However, Ashiruo obviously had to learn to take it slowly, like she did when she cooked Muningsu, and she couldn't be impatient. Moreover, this feeling was actually quite good for Tangmao. "You are dreaming. Don't think I don't know what you did in the Parthenon before." Apis glared at her. "How do you know?" Tangmao paused. "You know, she was in the contract space at that time. Look at the slutty look on your face. How could I not know?" Apis said without hesitation. Listening to her tone, it was as if he had done something treasonous. And why did he feel jealous? But obviously, he would not think that Apis was jealous. After all, she was the noble Medusa, and she really hated it, right? Fortunately, this is not a deep mountain wilderness. If Apis is not willing to cooperate, then forget it. Immediately, Tangmao left, and after leaving her residence, he went into the room opposite. You know, Hidi has been waiting for him obediently. Although she is a bit of a dog, she has not been a human for a day or two. So, it doesn't have much impact. Because he wanted to give Hidi a surprise, Tangmao used his shadow magic when he sneaked in. When he was close to the end of the bed, he jumped up directly. This move, it seems fierce again. And it is also more rounded. However, it was already late at night, and he was too lazy to think about it, and just thought he had remembered it wrong. Chapter 557 Battle on the Sea. In the dead of night in Athens, Zaoman, who had been having a good time, was heading back to the hotel in a daze. Although he didn't drink much, he was the kind of person who loved to eat and drink. Moreover, in the past few days, Master Zao had finally returned to a normal life. Every day was comfortable. If he hadn't known that the totem could make him stronger, Zaoman would have wanted to stay abroad. After all, he was not short of money. The small treasury his father gave him before his death was enough for him to squander. Of course, as soon as this idea of rotting his mind came up, Zaoman immediately gave up. Although he was not going to compete with his brother for anything, it didn't mean that his brother would not do anything if he knew he was still alive. Therefore, if you want to live freely, strength is still the most important thing. Boom. Just as he was about to reach the hotel, a sudden flash of light illuminated the entire sky, and then a huge lightsaber flew straight into the distance. Zaoman was stunned for 3 seconds, then shook his head. When he was about to look into the distance, he suddenly saw Hidi running out in a hurry. "Hidi, what happened? Where are you going?" Zaoman asked in confusion. Alas. Hidi stopped, but didn't know how to say it, and then chased after the place where the light magic was dense. Although Zaoman didn't understand what happened, he still followed. After all, it was late at night. If something happened to Hidi, wouldn't Tangmao come back and skin her alive? At this time, in the sky outside the city of Athens, Bran was chasing Tangmao in front of her with anger. Occasionally, tornadoes and lightsabers were constantly beckoning him. Fortunately, Tangmao was fast enough and was flying in the air without being locked, so he was safe and sound. If it were someone else, he would have been hit long ago. After reaching the sea, Tangmao looked at the disheveled Branki and said, "That's enough. I didn't know it was you. If you come again, I will fight back." "You don't know?" Branki smiled slightly mockingly, and then said in an extremely cold voice, "Hidi and I are very similar. You did it on purpose." "Don't think I don't know. Since you came out of the Alps, you often look at me with that kind of eyes." While speaking, the light constellations were also drawn one after another. Fuck. Seeing that this woman really wanted to kill, Tangmao naturally would not give in. Although this was indeed his fault, he didn't mean it. How could he know that Branki would be in Hida's bed? What puzzled him most was that Branki was a 4th level superclass magician after all. Could she be a pig? She was treated like that, but she didn't react at all? Question mark? Can he blame himself for this? He had already gone in. Could he stop halfway? As for looking at her, that was nonsense. She was pretty and had an S-shaped figure, but he didn't let her look. In general, Branki had been unhappy with him for a long time, and what happened tonight made her explode. Even if she was wrong now, she couldn't let her go on like this, otherwise, whoever died would deserve it. Boom boom. While Branki was describing the light magic, Tangmao also described the lightning magic. His speed was not much slower than Branki at all. It wasn't that he wanted to kill her, but the single unit light magic had a very strong attack power. Besides, the light magic of Branki, a little genius, was not comparable to Basham. When Branki's lightsaber took shape and emerged, the waves below rolled up. This momentum alone was enough to prove the power of this super level light magic, and also proved how terrifying Branki's strength was when she got angry. After the lightsaber was completed, Branki directly rushed towards Tangmao with the blade. She also knew that she had gone too far, but when she thought about how this man not only didn't listen to her when she asked him to leave, she wanted to tear him into pieces. After all, since she came to Alpine College, she had very little contact with the opposite sex, and from childhood to adulthood, she had almost never signed with the opposite sex, but she lost her most precious things tonight. Imagine how could Branki not be angry? Facing the sword that set off a huge tsunami, Tangmao also successfully depicted the Thunder Halberd. After the Thunder Domain was completely formed in the sky, the power of the Thunder Halberd burst out with damage several times that of the lightsaber. Then, the Thunder Halberd blasted out in a straight line, and the sea surface instantly exploded with huge waves. Fortunately, the two of them were fast enough, and were already a long distance away from the city of Athens. Otherwise, the waves alone, without sufficient defense, would be enough to cause heavy casualties in the city of Athens. Boom. When the two Thunder Halberds condensed by superclass magic collided with the lightsaber, another huge bombing sounded. Exclamation mark. The waves were lifted up, and then raindrops twice as big fell into the turbulent sea water. However, Branki's superclass light was still a little lacking. The lightning halberd directly smashed the lightsaber, and the remaining force still shocked her. Although Branki had heard of the horror of Tangmao's lightning system, it was only heard after all, and she had never seen it with her own eyes. Otherwise, how could she be careless? At the moment of the lightsaber judgment, she was not on guard. But fortunately, it was all water here. The control of the superclass of ice system made a thick layer of ice wall condense in front of her. Unfortunately, even if the speed of the frozen condensed wall was fast enough, it was completely ineffective in front of the lightning halberd that passed through, and it was almost destroyed when it touched. Seeing that the lightning halberd was getting closer and closer, Branki had to put on her own top-grade heavy armor. This magic tool had not been used for many years. This set of magic tools is also specially used to defend against the overbearing destructive magic of thunder. But even with the armor magic tools, Branki still has no confidence. After all, Tangmao's thunder is too overbearing, almost as if it can destroy everything. Boom. When the thunder exploded in her ears, Branki put her arms in front of her face. Women, there is no one who doesn't love beauty. Even Branki is the same. However, this deafening thunder is indeed earth-shattering, but Branki didn't feel any damage. It's as if she was not bombarded by this terrifying destructive thunder. Chapter 558, Concubine Bran's Reluctance. At this time, Branki, apart from feeling a little tinnitus, seemed to have nothing wrong. When she slowly put down her arms, she saw that Tangmao had appeared in front of her without knowing when. Before she could continue to attack, she heard Tangmao say, "You are not my opponent. Don't waste your magic power, and this is the territory of the Parthenon. It is not a good thing for you to lose your magic power here." Hearing Tangmao say that she is not an opponent, Branki was instantly dissatisfied. She was just careless. If she had made up the knife in time just now, even if Tangmao's thunder had a strong destructive power, could it still break her two superclass magics? Hoo-la-la. Hoo-la-la. At this moment, huge drops of water suddenly dripped down. Branki was stunned and looked back, only to find that there was no damage just now, just because the power of Tangmao's thunder halberd was all blasted into the sea. The tsunami generated directly hit the city of Athens. Fortunately, they are far enough away from the city of Athens, and there will be no casualties, even if there is an impact, which makes Branki feel a little better. But at the same time, she couldn't believe it. She always knew that Tangmao was very arrogant, but in her opinion, he was just stronger than his peers. As for the fact that the Holy Court did not move him, it should be because there was a certain huge force behind him, but she didn't understand it clearly. Of course, Bran concubine directly classified herself outside this age. In fact, she was also considered a peer. But I didn't expect that even I was not his opponent. Although I was careless, I might not be his opponent for such a terrifying destructive power and control. You know, it is very difficult to change the direction of the released power in time and accurately. Even she may not be able to do it. Moreover, according to Hida's previous story, Tangmao should have 2 monarch level contract creatures. They are also rare elemental dullings. She may not be able to deal with the strength of an elemental dulling, let alone 2. In addition, what Tangmao said is also a fact. This is the territory of the Parthenon. No matter what her reasons were, the moment she released lethal magic in the city, being caught was enough to convict her. Parthenon and Alpine Academy were at odds, and they had offended the Casa family not long ago. After calming down, Bran's anger slowly dissipated a lot. I won't let you go. Although she was calmer, Bran still didn't look happy when she thought of Tangmao's excessive actions just now. I didn't mean to do that. Who told you to run to Hida's room? Tangmao shrugged. He was really a little wronged. Although he found something wrong when he entered. But it was already like that. Wouldn't it be incompetent to withdraw? Moreover, Bran's figure was almost the best, so he naturally wanted to have a kiss. That's right. He didn't know who it was before, but he was not a fool afterwards. How could he not react? However, it had already started, so he just made the best of it. During this period, Bran even wanted to describe magic, but unfortunately, she was distracted and couldn't do it at all. This is the final result. Hida was as serious as a dead pig. If it weren't for Bran's recovery and going berserk, she might not have noticed it at all. You still say it. Bran heard this and wanted to take action again. Tangmao simply shut up. Anyway, he had tasted the sweetness and took advantage of it. No matter what she said, he would definitely be the person she could not erase from her heart in the future. Whether it was hatred or love, of course, he still had some self-knowledge, and it was definitely more of the former. You still look. After Tangmao shut up, Bran found that he was looking at her eagerly, and this look reminded Bran of the previous things. A nameless anger came up unconsciously. Obviously, this incident was a big blow to her. But think about it, she kept her body intact and unlimited, and suddenly it was broken. How could she not be angry? So, no matter how unreasonable she was, Tangmao chose to be humble. Seeing that Tangmao, who was usually unruly, suddenly became so obedient today, Branki was upset again. The more she felt that this dog thing was doing it on purpose, he did not wait for Branki to get angry again, and flew quickly towards the city of Athens. This kind of thing, even if there is any chance to ease the situation, it will definitely not be today. On their way back, they happened to see some knights of the Parthenon rushing here. He did not want to make enemies with them here. After all, he was still waiting for the magic tools that Ashurua made for him. If it were him, he would naturally ignore them, but Branki was from the Alpine Academy. So, when they rushed over, Tangmao suddenly appeared beside Branki, and the shadow magic was cast. A black circle wrapped the two of them, and then they disappeared in the air. Branki thought that Tangmao was taking advantage of her again. When she was about to explode, she sensed several wind-attributed magics, and then she realized that someone was coming. However, she didn't understand why Tangmao was holding her here and not moving. The knights on the other side are all quite strong. Two living people here, even if they are wrapped in shadow magic, are easy to be discovered, right? But, the next moment, those knights flew past here whoosh whoosh whoosh, and they didn't notice it at all? Question mark? Bran looked at Tangmao in surprise, and then thought of what happened tonight. Sure enough, almost no matter what time, the hatred is quite strong. He didn't need to think to know that Bran was going to get angry again. After watching the Parthenon knight fly over, he immediately dispersed the black energy and said, "Let's go." There was no way. Although the soft and beautiful body made people very fascinated, if you were too greedy, Bran would definitely fight with you. Then, he opened his wings of wind and flew back. Bran was angry, but in the end he could only snort in dissatisfaction and followed him. When the two came to the sea area of Athens city, they saw that the defense here had been strengthened a lot. Obviously, the movement just now was a bit too loud. The entire Parthenon knights were a little confused. First, the Silver Moon Titan attacked the city, but fortunately there were no casualties. Now if something happens under the Sacred Mountain again, their dignity will probably suffer a great blow. Chapter 559, Misunderstanding First, Deliberate Later, Rewards and More. After looking at the strict defense here, Tang Mao turned around and asked, "Shall I take you there?" No need. Bran Ki had made up her mind. No matter what, she would not be touched by Tang Mao. "Then can you go in quietly from here?" Tang Mao continued. "I'm going back to the Alpine Academy. Please tell Hidi for me." After saying that, Bran Ki flew away directly without any intention of staying. Seeing Bran Ki leave like this, Tang Mao did not say anything. After all, how could he push it away if he took her back to see Hidi? Knowing that it was not her, he still went in. So, it was actually good for her to leave. Then, Tang Mao quietly slipped in from the heavily guarded city. Although the Knights of the Parthenon were not weak, Tang Mao's shadow system mutation was silent, and people who were not much stronger than him could not detect it at all. And the highest commander of the defense here was just a superclass golden knight of the first system. How could he find himself? When he came in, he saw Zao Manan and Hidi who were stuck here. Then he walked out from behind them and said, "What are you two doing here? Don't you feel that it's a superclass magician fighting?" Hidi and Zao Manan were both stunned. Seeing Tang Mao coming back safely, Hidi didn't care about what happened before, but said, "Teacher Bran Ki, isn't she with you? Let's go back first." Tang Mao pointed to the Knights of Parthenon. Although Hidi was concerned about Bran Ki's situation, she knew that this was not the place to talk, so she nodded. Zao Manan was actually still confused, but he was much more sober. After running along with Hidi, the three of them left, and the Knights of Parthenon did not stop them. After all, they were in the city, not coming back from outside the city. After walking for a while, Hidi asked with some concern, "What about Teacher Bran Ki? How is she?" Although she knew that Bran Ki was a 4-element superclass, she had witnessed his horror with her own eyes when Tang Mao fought against the two groups of snakes and scorpions outside Cairo. With two monarch-level elemental pets, Bran Ki might not be able to take advantage. "She's fine. She just went back to the Alpine Academy first," Tang Mao responded, and then said, "I didn't know she would be in your room." Although Hidi didn't say this, it was only now, so Tang Mao chose to take the initiative to admit his fault. Although just as Bran Ki said, he did it on purpose. But, at this time, of course, he couldn't admit it, otherwise, he wouldn't think of stepping into the Alpine Academy. After all, Bran Ki would definitely not welcome him, but once is enough. He has always been a greedy person. As long as a period of time passes, there will always be changes. After all, his efforts tonight are different. Hidi believes that Tang Mao will not lie to her, and Bran Ki should have gone back. As for his explanation, Hidi did not respond. She was confused now. Although she was not a direct disciple of Bran Ki, she was also a student. However, it was outrageous that her boyfriend was her mentor. But she had a temper, but she didn't know how to vent it. If she didn't lose her temper, Hidi would always feel a little aggrieved. Exclamation mark. When they returned to the hotel, Hidi finally said, "I'm going back tomorrow. I don't want to see you during this period." Tang Mao opened his mouth, as if he didn't know what to say. He just watched Hidi enter the elevator and close the door. Zao Manan, who was standing next to him, was not a fool. Based on their conversation and Branch's previous rampage, he also made some guesses. "Tang boss, you are not Branch's teacher." Zao Manan made a gesture that all men understood and looked at Tang Mao. "Yeah." Hidi went back to her room. There were only the two of them here, so there was nothing they couldn't talk about. Anyway, they have the same interests, but he is surrounded by goddesses, while Zao Manan mostly meets young models. Zao Manan cursed when he heard this, and then said, "Another goddess has been taken by you. Even if we are nothing, you have no chance, right?" Tangmao looked at Zhao Manyan and said with a smile. Zhao Manyan paused. "Although this is a fact. But why does it sound so unpleasant? It seems that when the two of them meet talented, powerful and unique girls, Zhao Manyan has almost nothing to do. Is he the one who is jealous? I think I can't be with you in the future. When I meet beautiful girls, they are all attracted by your violent mania." Zhao Manyan complained dissatisfiedly. With Tangmao around, even his powerful tortoise shell ability has no chance to show off. Even if there is, it is because he can't handle it. When he met the great monarch level, Zhao Manyan thought it was better to forget it. Goddesses are also women, young models are also women. It's just a matter of a few minutes. Just have fun and that's it. Then next time we go out together and meet a big monster, you go and I'll be there to help you. Tangmao also said. Forget it, I think living is the real thing. It's the same anyway when the lights are turned off. Zhao Manyan said a little sourly. Really? Then why don't you just pull someone and turn off the lights to feel it? Tangmao said again. Can you still have a good chat? You will have no friends if you continue like this. Zhao Manyan said dissatisfiedly. Ding. At this time, the elevator came down. Zhao Manyan immediately walked in, looking like I don't want to talk to you anymore. Tangmao shrugged and followed him in when he was about to close the door. Obviously, Zhao Manyan was irritated. However, he was irritated for a long time, so there was no need to comfort him. When the two returned to the upstairs, they saw Mu Bei and Apis were there, full of confusion, as if they didn't know what happened. Of course, there was also a hotel manager who came here to ask about the broken window. What happened to Sister Hidi, and where did Sister Branki go? Although Apis saw that Hidi was in a bad mood, she didn't know what happened. Moreover, she knew how to read people's expressions, so she didn't ask her too much. As for Mu Bei, although he was old and stuffy, he could see that Hidi was not in a good state. Moreover, she said that Tangmao and the others were behind, so he could only wait. Branki went back to Alpine Academy. Maybe there is something urgent. Tangmao said casually. Zhao Manyan didn't say anything, although he wanted to expose his stage. But the feeling of thunder falling on the body was very uncomfortable, so he went back to his room directly. Seeing that Tangmao didn't say anything, Mu Bei left after confirming that nothing was wrong. As for Apis, she obviously didn't believe what Tangmao said. What could have destroyed the hotel accommodation here, and how could such a huge energy riot be generated on the sea surface not long after? Did you do anything to concubine Sister Bran? After Mu Bei and Zhao Manyan left, and Tangmao gave the manager compensation and sent him away, Apis stared at him and asked, "You are really a little smart." Tangmao's mouth twitched slightly, but there was nothing to hide from Apis. Anyway, in this world, she is definitely the person who will never betray herself. The power of the contract is so strong. Then he said, "Anyway, it's a misunderstanding between her and me." Tangmao briefly explained it, and Apis's beautiful eyes glared, and then said, "Humph, I'm afraid you won't stop, even if you know it, scum." At that time, how could I restrain myself? Tangmao argued. "Do you think you can deceive me?" The mark of the contract appeared on Apis's head, as if telling him that we are telepathic. Moreover, she also has psychic abilities. In this case, Tangmao's acting with her is obviously useless. Well, before I went up, I didn't know it was her, but afterwards, it was inevitable that I couldn't control myself. You know, my self-control in this regard is very poor." Tangmao confessed. After staring at Tangmao for a while, Apis snorted coldly and turned away. It seemed that he felt that staying here with Tangmao for a while longer would be contaminated, and he could only choose to go back to his own residence to rest tonight. As for walking the bird, I'm afraid there is no chance. Chapter 560, Apis, you can't afford to play. Rewards and more. The next morning, Hidi also left. She didn't tell anyone except Apis, including Tangmao. Mo-fan didn't know when she came back, but he was heartbroken after she came back. The iceberg goddess, the exquisite Bran concubine, was actually taken by Tangmao. Although he didn't think too much, He felt uncomfortable just like Zaomanan. After Hidi and Bran concubine left, Zaomanan, who was a big mouth, naturally didn't hide anything. Apis knew about it last night, so she didn't feel anything about it. Of course, Zaomanan was very dissatisfied with Apis's performance. After all, in his opinion, such a cute little sister might not be able to protect herself in the future. But she didn't have much interest in him, except envy. Because the things that needed to be dealt with had been dealt with, Fan also met Yixingsha, and Yuxu Town needed manpower, and Mubei's dog was about to break through to the super level. Tang Mao asked the three of them to go back first. And he still needed to stay here for a while. After all, the armor magic tool has not returned yet. If he leaves like this, he doesn't know when he will come back. Ashiruaya smells good, but he is not the kind of person who would give up a forest for a tree. Moreover, in the past few days, he has not seen this little hoof coming to his door. In addition, the Tikkunaris Munigio and AI tutor from the Magic City should also go to visit. Moreover, don't the sisters Liu Zion and Liu Ru have to go back to take care of her? In Yuxu Town, Yushishi hasn't played games with her for a long time. As for Muningsu, well, she smells good too. Thinking about it carefully, it seems that I'm a bit of a scumbag. I'm not giving them a home, so how can I be a scumbag? The Lenking sisters haven't taken care of them for a long time. Apisi, who was enjoying the food, saw Tang Maoyai there and suddenly lost his appetite. He said with a little contempt, "How long will it take for us to leave here?" In recent days, Apisi has been really humiliated. Almost all the daily nutrition was taken care of by her. Even last night, she was almost penetrated. In order to protect her snake body, Apis thought that she should leave here immediately. As long as she returned to a place where there were other women, she would not have to worry about this. Well, in fact, she was also a tangled little snake girl. She knew that she would not be able to escape sooner or later, but every time, when the time came, she would still try her best to refuse. Fortunately, Tang Mao did not force it. Otherwise, she would be the first Medusa in the world to be played by humans. Wait for the equipment, otherwise do you think I'm willing to stay here forever? Tang Mao responded, after coming back to his senses. Did you ask the people of Parthenon to process the Black Dragon scale for you? Apis said again. Apis did not forget that he got the alien scale. However, what she did not expect was that Tang Mao would let the people of Parthenon to make it. Didn't he get along with them? Don't just look at the surface of things, you still have a lot to learn. Looking at Apis's puzzled look, Tang Mao continued to pretend to be cool. HMPH Apis was very dissatisfied with this, and said very bluntly, "Isn't it just your mistress who helped? I really don't know where you low-level humans get so many tricks from. You are obviously not compatible, but you seem to have a good relationship. Apis, you learned bad things from Zaomanan." After hearing how Apis addressed Ashiruaya, Tang Mao curled his lips and said, "Really?" Apis suddenly spoke delicately and looked at Tang Mao. "Didn't you teach her, little brother? Are you playing with fire?" She hadn't eaten meat for several days. Every day, this little snake girl only quenched her thirst, but not her cravings. Now she is still like this. She is simply floating. Our Apis really wants to be bullied by her brother, Apis still said in a tone that makes people's bones soft. Tang Mao was about to get up when Apis immediately returned to normal and said, "You have to wait for your partners. If you bully me now and delay things later, don't blame me. I don't care much about business, it doesn't matter." Tang Mao approached Apis and held her hand. "Tang Mao, can't you afford to play?" Seeing that he was not joking, Apis panicked instantly. She was always unscrupulous when Tang Mao was busy. Otherwise, how dare she do this? But I didn't expect that the things that seemed to be very important today were not really important? Question mark? It was outrageous. Hey, you're right. I just can't afford to play. Apis regretted it for a while, thinking why did she have nothing to do? Fortunately, when Tang Mao was about to be dragged away by her, Mu Nuxin walked in. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for a long time, Lord Tang." After seeing Mu Nuxin coming, Tang Mao had to let Apis go, and she took advantage of this time to sit inside and distance herself from Tang Mao. It seemed that it was too dangerous to get too close. Seeing Apis hiding away, Mu Nuxin was puzzled and asked, City Lord Tang, who is this little sister? When in Egypt, Tang Mao made up Apis's pitiful life story and then said that she wanted to eat some delicious food but was sensible and didn't want to waste it, so the scene just now happened. Mu Nuxin had just arrived, so she naturally didn't doubt it. As for Apis, although she was very unhappy, she didn't say anything. There was nothing she could do. This dog man was no longer a human being. Why didn't the person you said to discuss cooperation come? Tang Mao looked at Mu Nuxin and said again, I came here today because Mu Nuxin said there was a family worth cooperating with. Mu Ningxu came here before for this matter. However, she left later because of the babies. Tang Mao was still there, so Mu Nuxin asked Tang Mao to go together. Alas, she has already refused. Mu Nuxin shook his head, then looked at Tang Mao and said, Master Tang, I really don't know what to say to you. You actually offended the chief of the Asian Magic Association? Oh. Tang Mao paused and said with some amusement, why, this family that wants to cooperate is also Sulu's lackey? As he said that, Tang Mao felt something was wrong again and then asked, what family? It's a small family. Their family naturally has nothing to do with Sulu. However, their cooperative family has a very good relationship with Sulu. So, she refused our cooperation. Mu Nuxin said again. Compared to this, Mu Nuxin is actually more curious about how Tang Mao offended Sulu. You know, that is a big boss in the sky, and it is not something that ordinary people can see. Of course, although they know that Tang Mao has offended the chief of the Asian Magic Association, the Mu family still does not want to sever their cooperation with the Tang family. Whether he is ignorant or reckless, standing here safely is enough to show Tang Mao's strength. If not, the Mu family would have severed all ties with Tang Mao and the others long ago. After all, aristocratic families value interests. People who only give without reward and do things based on feelings generally cannot become the head of a family. In that case, forget it. After dinner, go back to rest and return home. Tang Mao said again. Mu Nuxin nodded. Anyway, the cooperation has been blown, and there is no point in saying these things. Just as the two sat down, and Tang Mao finished ordering, two people suddenly came over. One of the older men looked at Mu Nuxin and said, Zirozin, I didn't expect such a coincidence, that I met you here. The man had very thick eyebrows, and was about 30 years old, but the whole person exuded a kind of old age and majesty that only people in their 50s could have. However, for some reason, looking at this man, he had an inexplicable urge to beat him up. Brother Azu, you are here too? Mu Nuxin was slightly stunned when she saw the person who came over to say hello. She didn't expect to meet Zhu Xiangshan and the others here. Take care of some things and then return to China. Would you like to introduce this friend of yours? Zhu Xiangshan looked at Tang Mao and asked Mu Nuxin. Tang Mao, have you heard of him? The surname is Zhu, and he looks proud. His eyes occasionally glance at Apis. Who else could it be, except Zhu Xiangshan from the Zhu family? But Tang Mao didn't expect to meet him in this way. Although the Zhu family is not very famous in China, it is still a bit famous internationally. Even within the family, there are several major forces in the world, and people are employed by them. Of course, there were also people in China at first, but it was a pity that they were destroyed by Tang Mao. Chapter 561, Just a Dog Under Sulu. Tang Mao. Tang Mao. Of course I've heard of it, but I didn't expect you to be so reckless that you offended Lord Sulu and still dared to stay in Athens. Do you have any courage? Zhu Xiangshan looked at Tang Mao and said in a slightly cold voice. What about you? Who are you? Although he had almost confirmed the other party's identity, he still wanted to confirm it before he heard him say it. Zhu Xiangshan. The tone of his name when he said it was as if the other party would know who he was as long as he said his name. Oh, I haven't heard of it. Tang Mao shrugged and then said, but it's the same. The dog under Sulu is not worthy of my eyes. Hearing this, Zhu Xiangshan clenched his fists tightly. Obviously, he was humiliated. However, this guy is obviously very good at hiding his emotions. He looked at Tang Mao and said, it's normal for an ignorant grassroots like you not to have heard of me. You should know Zhu Jiaming, right? Do I need to remember that kind of trash? Just tell me what you are doing here, and don't keep looking at my little lover, otherwise I don't mind ruining you. Tang Mao has long been unhappy with him looking at Apis. Although he likes the envy, jealousy, and hatred of others, he naturally has nothing to say to those who want to treat him as their plaything and are hostile. Apis was slightly stunned when she heard what Tang Mao said. Obviously, she didn't expect that Tang Mao could see it. To see that Zhu Xiangshan had a special idea about her, Zhu Xiangshan didn't expect that his thoughts were actually seen through, and it was a person he met for the first time. Boy, don't think that you don't know the height of the world just because you won the first place in the national government. I was also a member of the national government. However, even if he was seen through, Zhu Xiangshan still pretended that nothing happened and looked at Tang Mao and said, "You are also a member of the national government?" Tang Mao looked at Zhu Xiangshan in surprise and then said, "Then why didn't you lead the national government team to win first place? It seems that China didn't even get the top 10 before. I was wondering why the national service team was so useless before. A weakling like you can be a member of the national government. No wonder you can't even enter the top 10 in the world. For such people, there is no need for him to indulge them. Especially since he got first place, they acted as if they could do better than him." Tang Mao was really curious about this kind of confidence. Where did it come from? If he had this strength, what would he have done earlier? Humph, you don't know how to live or die. I didn't intend to deal with you myself, but since you are so ignorant, I will teach you a lesson. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I just want you to understand today that your title of first place in the World Academy competition, your title of the strongest young mage in the country, and your fearless natural duel system are all a joke in front of me, Zhu Xiangshan. Zhu Xiangshan couldn't hold back his anger at this time. Even though he was good at controlling his emotions, he was really angry when Tang Mao repeatedly sabotaged him. New and old grudges, plus if Tang Mao was dealt with, Sulu would definitely have a chance to make friends with him. Therefore, Zhu Xiangshan really didn't mind taking action himself. Mu Nuxin saw that the two were about to fight, and she was really not sure whether Tang Mao could deal with Zhu Xiangshan. After all, Tang Mao didn't know who Zhu Xiangshan was, but she knew it very well. They were the ones who lost in the last session of the national government students, but after so many years, Zhu Xiangshan would only become stronger. It can be said that there are few young people in the Chinese aristocratic families who can fight him now. She was not optimistic about Tang Mao fighting with him, so she hurriedly said, "Brother Zhu, what's the point of fighting like this? No matter whether you win or lose, it seems meaningless, right?" Mu Nuxin had no choice for a while. She could only choose to delay. If they returned to the country, even if Tang Mao was defeated, Zhu Xiangshan would not dare to kill him, based on his reputation. As soon as Tang Mao heard Mu Nuxin speak, he knew what she was thinking. I really don't know why there are always people who think they are weak, let alone Zhu Xiangshan, even his ancestor. Tang Mao felt that he was just stepping on him casually. However, as if he thought of something, Tang Mao said again, "You, Zhu Xiangshan, are really not worthy of dueling with me. Our strength is not at the same level at all. Let me give you a chance. In half a year, in Yuxu Town, if you can beat Emofan, my retainer in Yuxu Town, I will play with you. Of course, if you don't dare, get out now." Zhu Xiangshan was so angry. He is the strongest young man in the country, and Tang Mao actually asked him to challenge a younger brother of his? In other words, this is the city under the Parthenon. If it were another place, Zhu Xiangshan would definitely take action. Although Tang Mao's strength was indeed a bit exaggerated, in Zhu Xiangshan's opinion, he was definitely not his opponent. However, he did not refuse. "Okay, I don't mind destroying one of them first, and then playing with you. I just hope that when the whole country pays attention to Yuxu Town, you dare not fight." Zhu Xiangshan finished speaking and finally glanced at Apis. Then he left. At this time, he did not hide his greed for Apis at all. Mu Nuxin didn't know what to say. "I say, Mu Nuxin, do you think I'm weak?" Tang Mao spoke dissatisfiedly at this time. He went to the Demon Empire casually and often encountered the Supreme Monarch and even fought with the Emperor level Khufu. in this world, let alone the young generation. Even those old monsters, how many have really done it? Not to mention a contest with the Emperor. Even the Supreme Monarch is probably very rare, right? Master Tang, I don't think you are weak, but Zhu Xiangshan is really strong. No one in the young generation in the country can match him. At the beginning, he did not lead the national team to get the first place like you. But, after so many years, do you think he is still standing still? Mu Nuxin said helplessly. Don't worry, let alone a younger Zhu Xiangshan. Even if his ancestor comes, I will not hesitate to fight him. Then, Tang Mao said, but he may not have a chance to fight me. Mu Nuxin was a little puzzled. Because, after half a year, even Mo Fan can't beat him at all. Tang Mao shrugged. Mo Fan's strength has been reduced a lot, but Zhu Xiangshan is still enough to control. As the head of a family, he naturally can't do everything himself. Doesn't this make him look inferior? Even if he wants to do it, it has to be the old monsters in the aristocratic family, otherwise he will be too lazy to do it. If such a person really dares to challenge him, Tang Mao will directly release the totem. If he didn't turn into a demon, he really didn't have much confidence in dealing with these old clan leaders. Although their strength would change with age, just like Chen Yang's grandmother, didn't she teach him a lesson? So what if he was old? When he got ruthless, not everyone could fight him. However, no matter how proud Tang Mao was, as long as they didn't come to the door, these old monsters would not easily move out. After all, they were all people who valued face very much. Forget it, it's in China anyway. Even if there is something, it won't be too serious. Mu Nuxin didn't have his confidence, not to mention that it was Mo Fan. She didn't think Mo Fan was outstanding at all, and even less powerful than Mu Ningxu. Mu Ningxu was an internationally renowned ice queen. Maybe her ice system was not the strongest now, but her age was already on the surface. Among the future ice system bosses, there must be a place for her. Moreover, judging from Mu Ningxu's various performances in the national government team, the Mu family had obviously given up a genius. As for the young generation they trained, they didn't shine. Of course, it can only be said that it was their sorrow to be born in the same era as Tang Mao and other monsters. I'm too lazy to explain it to you. You will know it when the time comes. Tang Mao shrugged. As long as Zhu Xiangshan publicizes this matter this time, he will definitely show up in half a year. If he dares to come, he will definitely return in defeat. Chapter 562 Zhu Xiangshan meets Sulu. After finishing his meal with Mu Nuxin and sending her to the plane, Tang Mao and Apis went back to the hotel. On the way, Apis, who had been silent for a long time, asked in confusion, "How did you find out that Zhu Xiangshan had bad thoughts about me?" She was able to find out because of her ability, but how did Tang Mao know? She was a little puzzled. After all, Tang Mao was not the kind of person who knew how to read people's expressions. Because you belong to me, this is a man's intuition. Tang Mao supported Apis's soft buttocks and let her stick to his chest, saying with a look of claiming sovereignty. This scene made the passers-by who came and went nearby full of envy. There was no way, although Apis looked young, she was really a rare beauty. She has a Lalita feel, but also a mature flavor. The most important thing is her appearance, which is simply unique. Although Apis doesn't like being treated like this, she still feels a little surprised by his declaration of sovereignty. Others can look at my intimacy with envy, but those who want to express possession of you are courting death. Tang Mao continued. In fact, he is simply unhappy with people like Zhu Xiangshan. As for observing words and expressions, obviously, they are all fake. The reason for saying this is just to tell Apis that he can protect her. However, Apis is considered to buy it. It's rare that she didn't refute him or reject him. Just when more and more passers-by stayed to eat melons, the place where Tang Mao and Apis hugged each other suddenly glowed with silver light, and then the two disappeared in an instant. The crowd who were just thinking about eating melons were scared and ran away when they saw that this was a high-level space mage. No matter where, there are always more ordinary people, and this is a space mage, and it is a high-level magic. How dare the people present continue to eat melons? How do they know that Tang Mao and Apis are already nearly 1,000 meters away? He has strong mental power and spatial power, and with his mastery of space, his instant movement is naturally much stronger than that of ordinary space mages. However, when he returned to the hotel, Apis still hurriedly slipped away. There is no way. Today, she played with fire, but she didn't want to put it out. She was too tired, so she could only run away. Although Tang Mao did have some ideas, since Apis had hidden, he could only give up this temporarily. Sometimes, it is not necessarily delicious to eat it immediately. He is quite interested in boiling Apis and Asheruaya in warm water. There is still a long time, just take it slowly. After staying in the hotel for another day, finally on this morning, Asheruaya's maid who saw her in the God Mountain that day came here. This is the Black Dragon magic armor that His Highness made for you. His Highness said that you are lucky. Obviously, the waitress was not used to such rude words, and she was a little embarrassed to say it. Then she slowed down and said, after processing, this exotic scale can be immune to any super level elemental magic below the forbidden spell. As for the forbidden spell magic, she is not sure. As for other effects, you need to experience them slowly by yourself. After handing Tang Mao the magic armor, the waitress said, His Highness said that she will not forgive you for what you did to her that day. The waitress obviously didn't know what Tang Mao had done. It was the first time that the waitress saw Asheruaya so angry when she said this, but she was puzzled. If she was angry, why did she ask her to give Tang Mao the Black Dragon magic armor? Go back and tell your highness that I'm very satisfied with her service. I also think this Black Dragon magic armor is good. I will come to favor her again when I have time. Tang Mao took the Black Dragon magic armor and responded with satisfaction. You are so presumptuous. Hearing Tang Mao's words, the waitress was instantly a little angry. I didn't say it to you. Go back and tell her. Maybe she will praise you. Tang Mao smiled and then turned back to the hotel. As for the waitress, he was too lazy to pay attention to her. It would be a waste of saliva to talk too much to such a servant girl with a strong servility. After all, in her heart, Asheruaya is sacred, and her way of speaking is obviously not liked by others. When the waitress saw Tang Mao go back like this, even though she was very dissatisfied, she couldn't do anything in the end. Asian Magic Association. Damn Norman, damn Tang Mao, I must make you pay the price. Sulu's eyes were red, full of anger, as if she wanted to tear the two of them into pieces immediately. Unfortunately, neither Tang Mao nor Norman can be dealt with, just because he wants to. After all, he can't reach too far into China. Especially after he broke up with Xiao Zheng. As for Parthenon, as a sacred force, its status is not much worse than that of the Five-Continent Magic Association, and it is not something Sulu can move, just because he wants to. Sulu, is still wary, especially now that he has not been favored by the Black Dragon. He does not think that with his current strength, he can do something to satisfy his ambition. Chief, someone is looking for you outside. Just when Sulu was furious, a weak voice of a deputy came from outside. Obviously, he also knew that Sulu was in the midst of an outburst, but the person who came was from the Zhu family. Speaking of it, they also intended to show him goodwill, otherwise, he would naturally not come to Sulu now. Who? Sulu's tone was full of impatience, but he still endured it. After all, this deputy has been with him for a long time, and he still knows the difference between light and heavy. It's Zhu Xiangshan from the Zhu family. The deputy responded. Huaxia Zijia. Sulu didn't have a good impression of the Chinese people, but the people of Zujia had contributed to the capture of the Black Dragon. So, he said, let him in. Even if he was very impatient, even if the Black Dragon was not captured, they still had a certain strength in the international arena. So, in the end, Sulu decided to meet him. A moment later, Zhu Xiangshan walked in with Sulu's deputy. Unlike when facing others, Zhu Xiangshan acted like a dog in front of Sulu, without any arrogance at all. Mr. Sulu, I'm Zhu Xiangshan. I know you have hatred for Tang Mao. This time I came because Zhu Xiangshan acted like he was talking to his father, and reported to Sulu about the battle with Tang Mao. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 563, Returning to the Country. After listening to what Zhu Xiangshan said, Sulu said, "If you can crush him, it will be a relief for me. Lord Sulu, you can rest assured. He will only be around for half a year at most. I will definitely crush him by then," Zhu Xiangshan said respectfully. Typical old lig dog, but half a year is too long. I wish I could kill him now. Sulu's eyes were full of murderous intent, as if he had a huge grudge. Well, it was indeed huge. However, because of the heavy losses suffered by the Asian Magic Association this time, he really didn't want to deal with Tang Mao. After all, he was not the only one in power here. Many of his people were killed and injured. Would other people just stare at the empty position in a daze? This is the General Magic Association of a continent. There are naturally many politicians like Sulu and Zhu Xiangshan's arrival, plus this news. Since the other party showed goodwill, if they were capable, he would not mind giving them more power. Lord Sulu, Tang Mao is still not very popular in the circle of our domestic aristocratic families. However, he did do some glorious things, so we have not touched him so far. And this time, it is the only chance to crush him to death in public, and I hope you can be patient, Zhu Xiangshan said again. Since we are going to fight, we naturally have to publicize it. At least it must be known to everyone in the country. It just so happens that the Tang family has been thriving in the country recently. If we can annex the territory of Yuxu town in one fell swoop, it will be even better. This time, Zhu Xiangshan wants to play something big, and he is not afraid that Tang Mao will not agree, because the power of public opinion is also very strong. Sometimes it is not necessary to kill a person to death. After Zhu Xiangshan described the blueprint he imagined to Sulu, Sulu expressed his satisfaction. He even said that, if Zhu Xiangshan really did this, then the Zhu family could also intervene in the Asian Magic Association. Why does Zhu Xiangshan lick the dog? Isn't it just to get more power? The chief of the Asian Magic Association arranged a position for them, which was equivalent to a new promotion in the international arena. Moreover, as long as Tang Mao was not afraid and had half the courage of his stubbornness, he would not refuse his own entertainment project. On the other hand, Tang Mao had returned to China. As for Zhu Xiangshan's challenge, to be honest, he didn't take it seriously at all. After all, Zhu Xiangshan looked very strong in front of others, but in his eyes, he was a weak group. Even his own superclass thunder might not be something he could resist. Moreover, the fire system is now in a situation where it can break through at any time. However, Tang Mao was not in a hurry to break through. The reason why he did not break through outside was not because he was low-key or not anxious. It was just that he really didn't have much time these days. Moreover, although Athens was a city under the Parthenon, he was not sure whether Sulu would send someone to do something dirty. Therefore, if he wanted to break through, he naturally returned to China. After returning, Tang Mao did not choose to return to Yuxu town as soon as possible, but came to the Naxishan Trial Council where Tang Yu was. After wandering for half a year, he naturally went to report first. When he came back, "Is this the country where you were born?" It seems that there is nothing special about it, except that there are a lot of people. After arriving in Nangxi Mountain, Apus's voice floated over. "You have been in that small place for a long time, and it is normal to feel like a frog in a well. Slowly, you will understand the specialness of this place." Tang Mao responded. Apus glared at Tang Mao, but didn't say anything. What could she say? She just complained, and was immediately scolded. What else can she say? If she talks too much, she will be punished. So, Apus chose to remain silent. After arriving in Nangxi Mountain, the judges here also knew him, so he was not stopped outside the door. Of course, even if there was, the person who blocked the road was probably too experienced whether the hospital's Wi-Fi was fast enough. Now he is a person who dares to challenge a continent-level chief. A few small trial members come to jump in front of him, so he naturally doesn't tolerate his problems. However, he is not like a fool, kicking anyone he catches. Moreover, when he comes to Tang Yu's territory, he still has to be low-key. After all, what did Tang Yu warn him about the last time she saw him? Looking at Apis on the side, plus the fact that he had been out for some time. Hidi? Asharuaya? Concubine Bran? Question mark? Well, Apis can still be explained. After all, she is his contracted beast. But what about the three behind? While he was thinking, he had already arrived outside Tang Yu's office. Then, without any courtesy, he opened the door and walked in. However, the moment he came in, Tang Mao was slightly stunned. It was not an unbearable scene, but Tang Yu seemed to be educating some new trainee members of the trial. He was already angry, and he just happened to break in. Originally, Tang Yu saw Tang Mao coming back, and there was a hint of relief on his frosty face, but after seeing Apis beside Tang Mao, the temperature dropped a few degrees in an instant. And the trainee judges who were being scolded here were actually wondering in their hearts, who is this person? He actually broke in directly? Don't you know that Chief Judge Tang dislikes such impolite people the most? They felt that what could have been solved with just a scolding might become worse because of this person's arrival. The trial council is still a place where many children of noble families in the country are trying their best to enter. If they are sentenced to death because of a mistaken omission and a person's mentality, they are afraid that they will have no place to cry. You will go out first. However, just when several people were trembling and secretly unhappy with Tang Mao, Tang Yu suddenly spoke, although her voice sounded very cold, as if she was in a state of anger, but this anger did not seem to be erupting towards them. Several people immediately stood up and disappeared in the room in almost a few seconds. Tang Mao looked at Tang Yu's expression and knew that this woman was angry. He hurriedly pulled Apis and introduced, Yu, this is Apis, my new contract partner of the Orthodox Medusa of Egypt. Apis was suddenly pulled in front of her, and she was a little stunned. From Tang Yu's expression, she could see that the woman seemed to be very angry. Before she could watch the show, she didn't expect to be introduced. Contract partner? Well, it sounds better than a contracted beast. But Apis didn't understand. Tang Mao, you act like the boss and you are the second. Why do you suddenly act like a mouse seeing a cat? Moreover, it seems that Tang Mao is formally introducing himself to others. Tang Yu's face improved slightly after hearing this. At the same time, she was also a little surprised. How could Medusa, a demon who thought she had a very high bloodline, be contracted by Tang Mao? After Tang Mao finished speaking, in order to show that he did not lie, he deliberately used the ability of summoning. At the moment, when the contract door opened, Xiao Fengji flew out with a whoosh. Yee. After coming out, she looked at Tang Mao and called out, as if she was a little dissatisfied with being locked up. Then came out the Snow Girl and the Flame Girl. They just sensed Tang Yu's breath, so they came out. Seeing the two elemental pets, one fire and one ice, that suddenly appeared, Tang Yu was stunned and said, is this the Snow Girl and the Flame Girl? Yes. Tang Mao nodded. Oh my god. Where did you get the money to train them so fast? Tang Yu asked again. Speaking of which, the last time I saw Zunu and Yanji, they were only at the commander level. But, how long has it been since they became monarchs? Question mark? I don't know if they were promoted the last time they met. Immediately, Tang Yu looked at the little one who was complaining to Tang Mao and said, is this also an elemental pet? Yes, I went to the Sahara Desert and encountered it. Tang Mao was talking about his experience in the Sahara Desert, and suddenly he felt a pain in his ears. Only then did he realize that Tang Yu pinched him at some point. Question mark? Maybe it was only when he was with her that he had no vigilance, right? Hurry, Yu, what are you doing? Tang Mao asked in confusion. You dare to go to the Sahara Desert, don't you know it's a forbidden area? Tang Yu almost exploded. I'm fine, Tang Mao said in a low voice. Then you mean that you'll be in trouble only when I collect the body? Tang Yu said again. I was wrong. I won't do it again next time. Sometimes, dwelling on useless things will affect the relationship. It is better to admit your mistakes decisively. Chapter 564. Am I trying to make you admit your mistake? And, do you know you are wrong? Tang Mao, you don't listen to me at all now, do you? Tang Yu let go of her hand, but she was still very angry. After all, the background thing, rising and falling, expressed her dissatisfaction in her heart. No. When Tang Mao was thinking about how to quibble, she saw Apis there with Zunu, Yanji, and Fengji eating melons. She immediately pointed at her and said, "Isn't there Apis? Her strength is not weaker than the black snake." Apis originally liked to see Tang Mao's timid appearance. After all, this was the first time she saw someone who could cure him, since she knew him. But, before she even ate the melon, she was called out. And what the hell is the black snake? Is it as strong as her own bloodline? However, although she was very dissatisfied with Tang Mao's casual analogy, seeing the threatening expression, Apis snorted in her heart, and then looked at Tang Yu with a soft little sister next door and said, "Sister Tang Yu, in fact, my strength was suppressed when I was contracted. I didn't want him to go to the Sahara Desert, but he didn't listen to me." Rough. Tang Mao paused after hearing this, and hurriedly cast the magic of contract recall. Then, Zunu, Yanji, Zio Fengji and Apis, who were ready to continue to trick Tang Mao, were forcibly pulled back to the contract space. There was no other reason for locking up the three of them, just because Zunu and Yanji knew who Tang Yu was. If the two girls tricked him, his crime would be confirmed, and he would have no place to cry. So, he locked them all up by force. Seeing this, Tang Yu didn't care. Anyway, even if they were not here, she didn't believe that this stinky man would dare to deceive herself. If there are too many lies, there will be no trust in the future. She believed that Tang Mao would not do such a stupid thing. She looked at Tang Mao again and said, "What else do you have to say?" "Well, my strength is just hindered, so I want to try my luck in the Sahara Desert. Since it has come to this, it is natural to confess and be lenient. As for Apis, I can only teach this little girl a lesson later." Moreover, he really didn't want to lie to Tang Yu about everything. After all, the trust between them has never deteriorated. It's a pity that he is not a person who abides by the husband's code. However, apart from this matter, he naturally chose to confess. "You are already stronger than me now. How can you improve quickly? Isn't it enough?" Tang Yu sighed when she heard it. Sahara Desert? That is a human restricted area in the world. How dare Tang Mao? On the road of cultivation, if you don't make progress, you will regress. You know, I like to step on those who pretend to be stupid. I have countless enemies. In addition, I offended Sulu, the chief of the Asian Magic Association, because of the totem. How can I not become stronger? Tang Mao looked like he was surrounded by enemies, and he was really going to be killed at any time. Tang Yu didn't know what to say for a while, especially the chief of the Asian Magic Association. Tang Mao is so arrogant now, and he offended the chief of the Asian Magic Association? Question mark? You really are. Oh, forget it, as long as you are safe. Tang Yu was angry, but she didn't want Tang Mao to have any problems. Since it has come to this, there is really only one way to go, which is to become strong enough. After saying that, Tang Yu gently straightened his clothes, and then held his face with both hands and said, "I cannot mind anything, but I cannot accept you getting into trouble. Protect yourself, don't worry, even for you, I will live well." At this time, he did not continue to pretend to be a cow. After all, he was surrounded by enemies just now, and suddenly the sky was the boss, and he was the second. Could Tang Yu believe that he was the one in trouble? Question mark? "You, I miss you," Tang Mao said softly after seeing that Tang Yu's face was no longer full of anger. While speaking, he also reached out. However, unlike treating any other woman, he was cautious and tentative when treating Tang Yu. "No, wait until we get back." Tang Yu saw what Tang Mao meant, but still refused directly. She had already made a fool of herself in the office last time. This dignity that was finally pulled back, and there were so many trainee judges. How could she allow that kind of sound to come from her room? Tang Mao reluctantly withdrew his hand and asked, "When will you go back?" It's not like he hasn't been complained about before. He has already had the stimulation he deserves, so it doesn't matter if he's not here. Of course, this greed is also from the heart. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Annoying Tang Yu rolled her eyes and said angrily, "I haven't had it for a long time. Don't you want it after so long?" Tang Mao said again, "The first wife is almost deserted, right? Although it's not, that she hasn't had sex all the time. She must be like this. How can Tang Yu not want it? She's almost 30 years old, and it's said that women are like wolves in their 30s. How could she not have some needs? No. But even if she felt itchy in her heart, she didn't admit it. There was no way. Once she admitted it, it would be out of control. Seeing this, Tang Mao had to sit aside helplessly. What could he do? He was also helpless. Tang Yu wanted to continue working, but Tang Mao was obviously not honest. In less than a moment, he ran over to disturb her. From time to time, pinching and patting, there is no stopping. In the end, Deputy Judge Tang, who had always been diligent and worked hard, left early today with Tang Mao. After arriving at the apartment, Tang Yu took action without waiting for Tang Mao to do anything. It seems that she wanted to give him a warning. However, when I think of what a certain guy said, if the boy is strong, the girl will lean on the wall, and if the girl is strong, the boy will lie flat. Well, lying flat is not bad. The next day, the apartment was a mess, but Tang Mao was the only one left on the sofa from the two people who were experiencing life. Not to mention, this night was really a bit exhausting. It turned out that my self-righteous enhancement was nothing in front of the first wife. However, today he did not look like he was in a slump, and he still felt energetic. Obviously, this is not without any changes. He picked them up and threw them into the washing machine. After another round of cleaning, Tang Mao called Tang Yu and said that he would go back to Yuxu town first. Although Tang Yu was reluctant, she knew that he had to go back to advance, so she told him to be careful. Chapter 565 Two Little Tsundeers. After packing up everything, Tang Mao returned to the Magic City. As for the breakthrough, it is not urgent now. Moreover, there is another main point. The Killing Jade also needs some of its energy. According to what Killing told him, as long as it completely refines this energy and gives it all to Tang Mao, then he may get more. After leaving the airport, Tang Mao released Apis. Although Apis used to like staying in the contract space, it was just a fight. But now she really doesn't want to stay in it all the time. But the damn Tang Mao just won't let her out. So there are people in this world that you are afraid of. After Apis appeared, she was not angry, but said playfully, I think you should think about what you should do next. Tang Mao said dissatisfiedly, your performance yesterday really made me upset to the extreme. I didn't say anything about you and Sister Hede, nor about Sister Bran's concubine. Why did you behave badly? Apis asked weakly. You threatened me? Tang Mao asked with dissatisfaction after hearing what Apis said. I can see that the woman you are afraid of has a good impression of me, Apis said again. Okay, I'll let you go this time, but if there is a next time, I will keep you locked in the contract space. Tang Mao naturally would not be happy to threaten her. Apis originally thought that she could finally turn over, but after hearing what Tang Mao said, well, she was scared. He meant to lock her in the contract space, which meant to lock her in front of his mistresses. As for when it is not important, she will definitely be pulled out. What should I do if I'm not scared, but I can't stand it? The two of them didn't talk all the way, and soon they came to Kingshan Hunting House. To be honest, Kingshan Hunting House is a store that is really old and dilapidated. Tang Mao actually doesn't understand why old man Bao is reluctant to spend some money to renovate it. He doesn't need this money. Lingling, I'm back. Tang Mao shouted as soon as he entered the door. He didn't treat himself as an outsider at all. After all, the two daughters of the Kingshan Hunting House had a close relationship with him, and the future successor here might be his offspring. In this case, why should he be polite? Apis followed in from behind. She looked around and found a milky white kitten under an old-fashioned stool. She loved small animals and picked up the kitten and asked, are you looking for it? Unfortunately, Lingling was just walking down the stairs at this time. After glancing at Tang Mao, she glanced at Apis. Don't touch my cat. Lingling said coldly. I don't know why, but it seems that little Lingling is a little fierce today. Lingling didn't tie her hair into two ponytails today. She was probably taking a nap. Her hair was loose. She changed her previous cute appearance and gradually revealed a bit of girlish charm. Seeing that little Lingling was about to come down, Tang Mao took the lead and picked her up. Well, I have to say that the little girl has started to grow up. Although she is not as outrageous as her sister, she is definitely the most outstanding one among her peers. In this regard, Tang Mao directly attributed the credit to himself. Bo after pecking Ling Ling lightly, Tang Mao said, "I came to see you. As soon as I came back. Why are you still so cold?" Ling Ling was so angry that her face turned blue. But her little body was being held, and she couldn't get away. She looked at Tang Mao coldly and said, "My notebook told me that you returned to China yesterday." Then Ling Ling pointed at Apis and asked Tang Mao, "Also, is she deaf?" Tang Mao forgot about this. Ling Ling has her own location on the computer. Then she looked at Apis and changed the subject, saying, "She is not deaf. Her name is Apis. Put down my cat." Ling Ling said very impolitely. Apis blinked her eyes and looked at this arrogant little girl. "It likes me. Didn't you see that it doesn't want to leave my arms?" Apis didn't put it down, but gently touched the fur of the little white cat with her hand. "It's just scared, and its limbs are weak," Ling Ling said with a bit of disdain. Apis opened her mouth and looked at the girl who was a few years younger than her with some surprise. Indeed, the little white cat didn't like her. It seemed to smell the breath of Medusa on her body. It was completely like a sheep that dared not move in front of a wolf and completely lost the instinct to escape. But how could a little girl see such a subtle thing? Tang Mao was also a little impressed. This little girl's observation ability was really strong. And the reason why she was so angry should be because I haven't played with her for a long time. In addition, Apis scared her cat, so it was like this, right? Ling Ling struggled to run out of Tang Mao's arms and then took the little white cat from Apis's arms and put it in the backyard. The kitten was so scared that it was staggering. "Okay, baby, don't be angry. I brought you a playmate. Let's get along well in the future," Tang Mao said with a smile. Apis is actually only 16 years old at most. She is strong only because of her bloodline. With European bloodline, she looks much more mature than Oriental girls. Even many 20-year-old girls may not have the exquisite curves of Apis. As long as she is not a troublesome guy, Ling Ling said without any friendliness. Apis seemed very dissatisfied with Ling Ling's attitude. After all, Apis has an innate temperament that everyone loves. Even some children like to be around her. Few people will be so impolite and so repulsive when they see her for the first time. In the past, I would give such an excessive little girl to my maid as a snack without hesitation. Apis said very dissatisfiedly, who is not a proud baby. Why should I give in to the other party? Hearing this, Ling Ling stared at Apis and seemed to have noticed that Apis was not like an ordinary person. She turned around and asked Tang Mao, "What kind of demon is she?" Apis really looked like a human. As long as she didn't show her special golden snake eyes, no one would doubt that she was not a human. But Ling Ling knew she was a demon after just a few moments of contact. Even if it was me, if I didn't already know her identity, I would never doubt that such a lovely sister was a demon. Chapter 566 Two Little Tsunderes, Part 2. She is Medusa, my second contract partner. Tang Mao still introduced her as a partner instead of a contract beast. There was no way she was not raised by Zunu and Yanji, but was caught by him when she grew up. Zunu and Yanji are still cuter, Ling Ling commented lightly. Then she looked at Tang Mao with contempt. "You are getting more and more BT. Even snakes are not spared? What are you thinking? Apis is very strong." Tang Mao's mouth twitched slightly. It's true that it's not good for a lolly to be too smart. Although Apis next to her didn't like Ling Ling's arrogant look, she agreed with what she said and said, "Yes, you can take advantage of such a mediocre little girl, which really makes me have a new understanding of your shamelessness. You are mediocre." Ling Ling was immediately unhappy when she heard it. She is just young, okay? Exclamation mark. What is mediocre? Can she speak? Question mark. Hearing this, Apis smiled. Her smile was extremely bright, and she deliberately straightened her chest, as if to tell Ling Ling that we are not at the same level at all. They are both still Lalita, but in this respect, there is obviously no comparison. After all, Ling Ling has just started to grow up. Ling Ling was speechless for a rare time. She turned her head and looked at Tang Mao. At this time, Zhao Yanji ran out. It seemed that she heard Ling Ling's voice. As an elemental pet with no bottom line, it had been a long time since she saw Lingling come out to say hello. However, because Apis had recently moved into the contract space, she had long become a little follower. After all, Apis had a lot of good things in her hands. However, after seeing Lingling and Apis both signaled it to go to them, Xiao Yanji hurried to Tang Mao's side. "Dead weird uncle, don't touch me anymore in the future." Lingling glared at Tang Mao and said, "That's right, what's so good about touching such a nutritious girl?" Apis also did not miss the opportunity to squeeze Lingling. Okay, stop making trouble, let's go to eat. I haven't enjoyed the seafood feast in the Magic City for a long time. Tang Mao interrupted at this time. As soon as she heard about the seafood feast, even the snow girl ran out unconsciously. Although she didn't like to interact with humans, she was not at all opposed to Lingling and other cute little girls. After all, it was not the first or second time that she hunted monsters with Lingling. As for Apis, well, since she came, she has been the big sister. She is the same as Xiao Yanji. When Tang Mao is not around, Apis is the boss and also belongs to the mother level. As the snow girl and Yanji ran out, Xiao Fengji in the contract space naturally couldn't stay. She doesn't like the feeling of loneliness. Xiao Fengji is not the snow girl and Yanji. She is very familiar with Lingling, so when Apis saw her come out, she stretched out her hand to signal. Xiao Fengji didn't hesitate and approached Apis directly. With a well-behaved look, rubbing Apis didn't mind being rubbed by this little guy, and she looked very enjoyable. Yai the little Fengji, who was gently rubbed by Apis, made a baby sound of enjoyment. Lingling didn't feel unhappy, but looked at Tang Mao with some surprise and said, "Is this another elemental pet?" The appearance of the little Fengji now is exactly the same as that of Zunv and Yanji in their childhood. "Well, this is my new contract pet, Fengji," Tang Mao replied. "You are probably the first one in the world who can be favored by so many elemental pets, right?" Lingling said with a feeling of disbelief. "It's also good luck to go to the Sahara Desert." Tang Mao had nothing to hide from Lingling. He told everything about the Sahara Desert except Apis's flute. Apis naturally wouldn't expose it. After all, would she use such a shameful thing to provoke Tang Mao? Especially this arrogant little lolly that made her hate it. "What about it? How did you contract it?" Lingling asked, puzzled. Let alone the orthodox Medusa, even some big monsters with a trace of Medusa's bloodline are full of disdain for humans. It is even more difficult to contract them than to kill them. Of course, if you really beat the other party to the point of dying and unable to move, it is not difficult to contract. However, let alone the orthodox Medusa, even the big snakes with Medusa's bloodline, how can anyone easily injure them? Even if they are seriously injured, not everyone can be sure that they will not let the other party run away. The vitality of the monarch is extremely strong. This, of course, is because of my personality charm. Tang Mao looked like it was my personality charm that conquered her. Lingling naturally didn't believe it, but she didn't expose it, but said, "It turned out to be a snake monster with bad eyesight. No wonder you can be contracted." Apis was about to speak. Tang Mao hurriedly stopped him and said, "Okay, stop arguing. Go out for dinner. These two little lollies are simply endless." Lingling and Apis were just seeing each other's dissatisfaction, so naturally there was no stopping. However, in the end, the two of them still gave Tang Mao face. There was no way this guy had already made a move to signal the two women, and he would not be polite if they continued to quarrel. Both women knew that Tang Mao's shamelessness would not stop, so they chose to cease fire. After all, neither of them wanted to let him get away with it, just because they were unhappy with each other. After arriving at the place where they often eat seafood, Tang Mao skillfully ordered a large table of delicacies. As long as there is something in this restaurant, there is nothing that cannot be seen on this table. I don't like this kind of red scorpion. Apis saw a large plate of red crayfish and immediately turned black. She didn't understand why Zuno and Xiao Yanji ate so deliciously. Did they have never eaten delicious food? And why did Xiao Fengji look like she was eating so deliciously? Question mark? This is a lobster, not a scorpion. Tang Mao peeled one and stuffed it into Apis's mouth regardless of whether she was willing or not. This kind of thing can only be enjoyed when it is really eaten in the mouth. This seafood restaurant is a place he often visits. Not only does he like it, but Zunu, Yanji, and even Zoo and Snake love the food here. Apis was very resistant, but since it was stuffed into her mouth, she habitually tasted it. After all, being stuffed in the mouth all the time has become a habit. After taking a bite, an inexplicable change occurred on Apis's face that was originally full of disgust. ? Spicy. This is something I have never felt before. Ling Ling looked at Apis, who looked really delicious, and said, "You are surprised by what you have seen. You have never eaten crayfish. It's really pitiful." How could Apis pay attention to her? The meat tastes really good. Moreover, the abalone, scallops, and oysters that came later were also very delicious. I have to say that Tang Mao is right. China has a different kind of beauty. Chapter 567 Gentle Liu Zun. After a big meal with Ling Ling, Apis, Zunv, Yanji, and Zia Fengji, the bill was 6 figures. It must be said that these little guys and Apis have really big appetites. I really don't know how they have such big appetites in their small bodies. Apis didn't feel anything when she was eating, but she was a little unhappy after the meal. Because, during the whole meal, she felt that she was completely crushed by Ling Ling. Well, it was just that she didn't want to pay attention to her in front of the delicious food. Ling Ling asked Tang Mao to come, because she had recently investigated some things about totems. She decided to find a time with Tang Mao. However, Tang Mao said that he was going to break through the 3rd system super level, so he chose this time to have a good retreat. After seeing the real tip of the iceberg of the world, he realized that his current strength was still too weak. Of course, the breakthrough was fake, and it was just looking for clues. There was no need for him to take action. Wouldn't it be better to arrange Mo Fan to Ling Ling's command? He has been very busy recently. After making an appointment with Ling Ling, Tang Mao sent Ling Ling back home. Then, he went back to his canary apartment. It has been a long time since I last saw Muafi and Tuafi. It is time to see them. As for Apis and others, they were directly locked up in the contract space. They have all eaten and drunk enough, and it is always not good to be outside. Especially Zunu and Yanji, although they are not huge, the fact that they are both demons cannot be changed. Even though they look very beautiful, in order not to cause panic, when they came out after dinner, Tang Mao arranged them back to the contract space. As for Apis, back to the magic city. She is not needed recently, and this little hoof is always looking for trouble for herself, so naturally she has to be locked up. Although she resisted, it was a pity that it was ineffective. After arriving at the apartment near Mingsu Academy, he hurried back impatiently. But the embarrassing thing is that when he came back, he found that the house seemed to have been uninhabited for a while. ? In other words, Munigio and AI22 have not been back for a long time. Inexplicably, Tang Mao felt a little lost. Speaking of which, this was the first girl he lived with besides Tang Yu. Although he didn't come here first, when he came back, it was because he met Ling Ling first, and his relationship with Ling Ling was very pure. Therefore, for his women, he wanted to see them first, even if he didn't do anything, just meet and chat. It's a pity. However, he was not a sentimental man. Seeing that Munigio and AI22 were not there, Tang Mao turned around and went to the sisters Liu Zan and Liu Ru. This kind of hanging on a tree has never happened to him. About half an hour later, he returned to another apartment he bought. When he opened the door, he saw that he didn't know whether it was the elder sister or the younger sister lying on the sofa to rest. There was no way the two sisters were twins. If it weren't for the difference in personality and size, he really couldn't recognize them. Tang Mao walked over gently, and when he was about to reach out to identify them, she suddenly woke up. Obviously, the ability of the blood race is still very powerful. Especially with the blood supply from Tang Mao, their strength is naturally comparable to that of a commander. Tang Mao. The girl who was about to take action stopped immediately after seeing that it was Tang Mao, and let him measure. In fact, at this time, there was no need to identify. With this gentle temperament, you can tell who it is at a glance. If it was my sister Liu Ru, even if she didn't pierce through with a claw, I'm afraid she would have cursed. and he has always been the kind of person who bullies those who are easy to bully. Then, he climbed onto the sofa that couldn't accommodate 2 people, but he forced it to accommodate. When did you come back? Although Eliuzan was still a little shy, she was gentle by nature and had the blood in her body, so she didn't mean to refuse at all. I just came back from abroad. Didn't I come to see you two first? Eliuru? Tang Mao asked his question, while not stopping his hand movements. Ruru and sister Ding Yumian's elders went to practice, Eliuzan replied. Eliuru found that she was strong, and even some old vampires were not her opponents at all. However, even though she was very strong, she could not use her own strength at all. Therefore, she often went to Yuxu town to practice with Ding Yumian's elders. Not to mention, although Ding Yumian's elders were not very strong, it was still easy for him to guide Eliuru. What he wanted to teach was simple, just to let her play her own strength. Then why didn't you go? Tang Mao smelt, and his hands were not idle. I think it's good now. I don't have to worry about food and drink, and I don't need too much power with your protection. Eliuzan said, paused and said, do you think I'm too lazy? You might as well just say that you are afraid of hurting people, and even more afraid of seeing blood. Tang Mao directly pointed it out. Although Eliuzan is also very powerful, she can't stand the sight of blood. Even when she absorbed Tang Mao's blood for the first time, she was so scared that she almost fainted. As a vampire, it's fortunate that she followed me, otherwise she might be bullied. Oh, well, if it weren't for me, she might have died. After all, when he saw her, Tang Mao discovered that her blood was drawn very badly. Obviously, even if she didn't die, she would not live long. Hate Eliuru liked to make fun of her about this matter, and Tang Mao was always like this. You know it all, and you still ask? Eliuzan said angrily. But even when she was angry, she was still the kind of gentle woman. She didn't push Tang Mao to the ground, but catered to him. And Tang Mao also enjoyed this kind of kingly treatment, and let him do whatever he wanted. Eliuzan might be the most obedient woman he knew. And just when the two were enjoying and immersed in the happy fusion, Eliuru, who had been practicing for a day, came back. It would have been fine if she came back, but she even brought Ding Yumian with her. When the two girls came in and saw Tang Mao and Eliuzan sitting together in harmony on the sofa, they were both stunned. Eliuzan was so scared that she ran back to the house. She was obedient, but only when there were only the two of them, or when there was only her sister. At other times, Eliuzan was still a shy little girl. Long time no see. Tang Mao was not embarrassed at all. He looked at the two girls and stretched out his hand to say hello. After all, as long as he was not embarrassed, then others would be embarrassed. Chapter 568 The Sister Who Bears the Output. Eliuru didn't have much reaction to this scene. After all, she was already an experienced person. But Ding Yumian was obviously not as calm as usual. She hadn't even seen the upper body, let alone this situation. I'm going back to school first. Goodbye Eliuru. After saying that, Ding Yumian almost ran away from here. Tang Mao looked at Ding Yumian who ran out the door and thought to himself, what a fuss. You're still looking shameless. At this time, Eliuru had already walked over and said with contempt, how do I know you're going to bring people here? Tang Mao said dissatisfiedly, I don't have the right to bring friends here? Why? Are you afraid that Muningsu will find out that you're supporting me and my sister outside? Eliuru asked dissatisfiedly. That's not the case. Tang Mao shook his head. What is there for him to be afraid of Muningsu? He's afraid of Tang Yu. Okay. Eliuru curled her lips after hearing this, but then she explained, don't worry, I haven't told anyone about my relationship with your Tang family. It's just that you let Ding Yumian see it just now, so don't blame me. You are not afraid of the light, what is there to hide? Tang Mao said, as if he didn't care about these. No matter whether he was afraid of Tang Yu knowing, at least he had to pretend in front of them. Oh. So, my sister and I can also live in Yuxu town. Eliuru said again. Eliuru still likes Yuxu town very much. The development there is also booming now. In addition to the black snake, Beza, UMO Phoenix and a big vampire Bora. No matter whether it is the threat of demons or any other threats, they can't touch the territory of Yuxu Town at all. In addition to the share of a mineral vein in Peru, the mineral vein not far from Yuxu Town, and the cooperation with the Mu family and the Dongfang family, Yuxu Town is now completely comparable to the income of a family in terms of funds. The most important thing is that Xiao Zheng gave Tang Mao the right to freely enclose the land outside Phenio City. The future of Tang's company is almost limitless. Of course, Liu Ru is not very interested in whether the power is big or not. She is only interested in one thing. That is the beautiful mountains in Yuxu Town, especially the mountain range, where Yushishi is. She really likes it. Tang Mao didn't know what to say at once. Are you kidding? He keeps them here, so he can do whatever he wants at any time. Although it is also possible to go to Yuxu Town, it will be less fun. Okay, as long as your sister is willing. Although this will reduce some excitement, he still did not refuse. After all, as long as Liu Ru exerts force on his hands, he will no longer be the original one. How you hesitated? Liu Ru said dissatisfiedly. You are holding my lifeline. How can I not hesitate? Tang Mao really didn't expect that when Liu Ru was so fierce. Although he could force her to let go, he never liked it. Besides, Liu Ru didn't really know how to pinch, right? But even if she thought so, she was still a little panicked when her weakest point was being controlled. So you don't object to my sister and I moving over there? Liu Ru said again. Of course not, it's just that there's less excitement, nothing else. Tang Mao responded truthfully. Hate Liu Ru listened to what he said and glared at him shyly. So Tang Mao likes the feeling of secretly treating them as his mistresses? Then you move over tomorrow, I'm going back too. Tang Mao said, while disarming Liu Ru. Liu Ru didn't refuse. After all, she was a little greedy just now, especially when she saw the teeth marks on Tang Mao's neck. Speaking of which, she hadn't sucked Tang Mao's blood for half a year. Immediately, Liu Ru bit it. The same position, the same look of the two girls, but the feeling of sucking blood was different. This tiger girl really sucked hard, although the amount she sucked was the same as her sister Liu Zhan. However, it felt like she was draining her blood without any gentleness. Tang Mao's counterattack was also aggressive for her irritability. However, after a few seconds, Liu Ru opened her mouth. The inexplicable impact made her lose the idea of continuing to suck blood. She only had one idea now, which was to soar up to 90,000 miles. In the room, Liu Zhan, who had just calmed down, understood that Ding Yumian might have left after hearing the voice of her sister Liu Ru. She dared to come out. It's not that she didn't suck enough, but she simply didn't want her sister to be in a state of fainting all day tomorrow. As a sister, she still needs to share. Well, in fact, Liu Zhan just felt that Tang Mao might not be able to bear it. Just now, because Ding Yumian came, she was very uncomfortable. Otherwise, she would give it to Liu Ru. After all, she hadn't seen Tang Mao for a long time. Sure enough, even Liu Zhan, who gave in to her sister in everything, knew how to fight for this kind of thing. As for Liu Zhan coming out, Tang Mao was naturally happy and at ease. After all, only when two sisters are together can their advantages be revealed. This is something that no other girl can compare to, not even Ling Ling and her sister. Sisters are sisters, twins are twins. They are different however. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Liu Zhan realized that she was careless. It turned out that Tang Mao was very strong, and she really became the substitute sister to take the lead. In the end, she didn't know how she managed to survive. Anyway, she had a rare late sleep the next morning. She didn't even know when Tang Mao left, but he did leave a note for the two sisters, saying that they could move by themselves. Early in the morning, outside Yuxu Town, looking at the changes here, he finally understood why Liu Ru wanted to live here. This outer area alone was already dazzling. When he left last time, although he was going to expand and renovate, he didn't expect that in just half a year, the streets were already clean, with countless green plants planted on both sides. There were many high-rise buildings in the business district, with brilliant lights, elegant and unique. The residential areas were neatly planned, and compared with the chaos and slovenliness last time, it was like a new piece of land. When he left before, the new city built here could be said to be a large construction site, with mudded materials piled up into small hills everywhere. Now after the construction, it is really a new city. However, many of the small styles of the buildings here seem to have used the model of the Bow City back then. There is a bit of ancient charm in the novelty, although it is an imitation of the ancient charm. But no matter who it is, they have seen the rise of this small family. Chapter 569 Tang's Changes. There are many magic training grounds on the mountainside. Most clans have independent training grounds for magic disciples to practice. The prosperity of a clan can often be roughly judged by looking at the magic training ground. Although there are not many clansmen in their Yuxu town, some young people with potential and good talents come to join them. As long as they have made achievements, Yuxu town is willing to vigorously cultivate them. Therefore, this magic training ground is naturally an indispensable one, and it is built in an extremely luxurious way. In short, there is no saving of money. Going up the mountainside, there are many unique villas. These villas are allocated to the main members of Yuxu town. They can be said to be the core here. Of course, although many of the core members here are not surnamed Tang, no matter who they are, as long as they have made great contributions, they can seek a place here. After all, those who can live here are people who have made great contributions. Tang's family can't give them anything else at present, but a living environment is not a problem. There are many exquisite mountain roads around the villas that can be used for racing. They finally lead to their own mansion. The mansion is in a very open position on the top of the mountain. There are the largest magic arena, flower sea garden, bamboo forest, maple forest, large swimming pool, spring water meeting hall. In short, it is a special sense of luxury. At present, what Tang Mao has to do is to expand his family, and in other aspects, it can be said that he already has everything that a noble family should have. There are even absolute security guards here that those noble families don't have. Not to mention the big ones, just the small ones. For example, Ding Yumian's blood clan members and Yushish's moth army. There is no need to spend money to support them. Yuxu town gives them a safe life, and they are responsible for the security here. Not to mention, with them, there is no need for several patrol mages. Welcome back. When Tang Mao was admiring this place, Muningsu fell from the sky. Obviously, someone had reported to Tang Mao when she stepped into this place. Having spent a lot of money, Muningsu needed to hear Tang Mao's opinion. Was he satisfied or not? How is it here? Are you satisfied? Muningsu asked. If you like it, I'm satisfied. Tang Mao replied. Do you want to take another look? Muningsu was not surprised by this. Instead of asking Tang Mao if he was satisfied with the scenery, it would be better to ask if he was satisfied with her clothes today. I think we shouldn't waste time on such meaningless things. Let's do something meaningful. What do you think? Although he was asking, Muningsu had already been picked up. Obviously, there was no room for negotiation. He let her go that day in the Mediterranean, so how could he let her go today? Tang Mao had to enjoy Muningsu's cool feeling, of course. If it was before, he would definitely not have this temper. After all, he had just consumed a wave of energy in the early morning, and now he came back and consumed a second wave. It was unbearable. But since he has improved in some aspects, he has not experienced his limits. Today is an opportunity. Muningsu is not like other women. Even if he is a little weak, she will not say anything to him. Of course, although there are eye signals, they are not spoken. Isn't it better if he doesn't look at her eyes? He took Muningsu back to his room. Well, it's not bad. At least the sofa is good, the desk is good, and the bed is even more nice. After experiencing them one by one, he praised Muningsu. Muningsu asked curiously, when did you have so much endurance? You sound like you were not good before. Tang Mao was dissatisfied immediately, although this was also a fact. But can the facts be said casually? Question mark. Don't you want to save face? No. I just feel that you are different after half a year. In fact, Muningsu wanted to ask last time in Athens, but she was embarrassed. But today she almost fainted, and Tang Mao was still energetic, so she couldn't help but be curious, but Tang Mao did not answer this question. There was no way. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because of Apis, that he could withstand any charming stimulation, or maybe it was because his body had changed when he broke through the wind superclass. As for what it was, he really didn't know. Near noon, a nose of fragrance woke Tang Mao up, and he slowly opened his eyes. Not to mention, although the nectar was good, it would make you drowsy if you drank too much, and women seemed to have a natural advantage. She had sorted herself out at some point. Obviously, she was very weak when she was lying down, but she recovered in a short time. Tang Mao buried his head in the bed. Well, it seemed to be a bit too much. He was no longer as upright as before. Tang Mao understood that, whether he became stronger or not, there was still a limit. He said immediately, I'm going to eat a lot of tonic food today. He must take good care of his body. If the state is not good, the prairie may fall from the sky. It seems that there is something urgent. Let's go and see first. I will ask the kitchen to prepare it for you. Muningsu looked at Tang Mao, who was as fierce as a tiger in the previous wave of operations, and said with a smile. She smiled beautifully, but her eyes always gave Tang Mao a feeling of you can't do it, you can't do it. Question mark? You should get up quickly, the fountain water conference hall is waiting for you. Muningsu didn't have this idea. In fact, this was completely Tang Mao's own feeling. Moreover, it seemed that there was really something urgent. When she finished speaking, she left. Tang Mao climbed up. Don't say it, this feeling has not been felt for a long time. As for the urgent matter mentioned by Muningsu, in his opinion, there was actually nothing urgent. After all, it was nothing more than the demons there, floating again. A moment later, Tang Mao came to the conference hall. As soon as he came in, he found that there were already many people sitting inside. Of course, Zhao Manan and Mo Fan were not here, and Mu Bei was in seclusion to break through. After seeing Tang Mao coming, everyone stood up at the same time. Ahem. Tang Mao was a little uncomfortable, looking at everyone and said, you guys talk, don't worry about me, I'm not interested in these things, if there's anything you can't beat, I'll do it. He was just here to walk around. As for the meeting, there's no such thing. With my little knowledge, what kind of meeting is it? P.S. I'll go home around the 15th, and I'll owe the reward update for a few days, and I'll go back and add more when the time comes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 570, Breakthrough begins. He originally wanted to find a place to sit down, but in the end he was arranged to sit in the main seat. After all, it was a family, and a thriving one. Without rules, there would be no order. After he sat down, the others also sat down one by one. It was at this time that Tang Mao discovered that Xiao Yu, who had a temperament similar to Muningsu, was also here. It turned out that this girl had become a senior executive without knowing when. Speaking of which, she looked really nice in a swimsuit. Unfortunately, becoming a senior executive of Yuxu Town meant that Tang Yu also knew about her. In this case, if there was any idea, it could only be an idea. It's like this. The Ocean Alliance issued a disaster warning yesterday, and after a rough calculation, this problem is likely to gradually approach several coastal countries in Asia. Japan and our East China Sea coastline may face the biggest ocean crisis. As the only outstanding manager of the Mu family, Mu Linsheng currently holds a very high position in Yuxu Town. And this Mu Linsheng did not embarrass himself. Everything he managed was very cautious and orderly. It can be said that his contribution to the present of Yuxu Town is not small. After Mu Linsheng finished speaking, Tang Mao looked at the people sitting next to him wearing the uniforms of the Ocean Alliance. They were obviously sent to notify various regions. Since the other large base cities have a certain defense foundation, They must be stronger in disaster resistance, but Phenio Base City is a new base city, and the urban progress of Phenio City will not be much more advanced than Yuxu New City, so several government officials of Phenio City, representatives of the Ocean Alliance, and the Magic Association came here specifically to hold an internal meeting on this matter. Of course, these people do not belong to the Asian Magic Association. Otherwise, it would be good if they did not cause trouble. You come to this picture. As Mulin Sheng finished speaking, a woman from the Ocean Alliance stood up first and put the picture on the large projector. Tang Mao was not very interested in this. All he could do was to take charge of the work. As for the rest, he could not worry about it. As for this woman, he was even less interested. After all, he was still a little weak. However, when they talked about a place to study in Mulin Sheng said that if he could go there to study, it might be a great help to Yuxu Town, so he hoped that someone could go there. At this time, a woman who was sitting in the back and full of youthful vitality spoke up and signaled that she could go. This woman was none other than Ko Kinkin, who had been his student for a few days and admired him very much. This little girl got the guidance of Dean Zhao because of his help. After she finished her studies, she came here to work for Tang Mao's family. Of course, she was also attracted by everything here. Little girl, go to and go directly to Mochizuki Kyankson of the Mochizuki family and say that you are my student. She will definitely take good care of you. Tang Mao rarely spoke at this time. The Wang Gaiyu family is internationally famous for dealing with ocean monsters. Shuangshao Pavilion and Danhei War City stand tall in the two major cities of Japan, and it is also the existence of Wang Gaiyu. I think I can learn a lot of other things from them this time. Hearing this, Ko Kinkin responded happily. Ko Kinkin was still a little surprised by Tang Mao's huge network of relationships. She really couldn't understand why Tang Mao knew people who were almost out of reach for her despite the small age difference. Yuxu City is a private territory, and Wangaiu is also a private territory. It is close to the sea and the mountains. They have many talents and rich experience, especially in terms of defense measures. They are indeed a senior who is worth learning from. The city lord actually knows the key figures of the Wangaiu family. That's great. Mulin Sheng also said after hearing this. Tang Mao didn't say anything. After all, it was a bit unfamiliar to say that they knew each other. He often played horse riding games with her, and it would take a whole day to play. If he knew that Ko Kinkin was his nominal disciple, he would definitely be treated as a VIP when he went there. They would never be rejected, like they did during their first experience. Mochizuki Chiksen might still have some opinions about Chinese people, but after such a long time together, Tang Mao corrected a lot of them. After the meeting, Ko Kinkin actually told him that there was another person who had recently joined Yuxu New City. When Tang Mao saw a dark guy, he realized that it was Bei Hongfei. Speaking of which, this kid also graduated with honors, but he was not satisfied. Because he realized his shortcomings and realized what a truly strong person looked like. Tang Mao had a profound impact on him, and then he went out to experience. Although he had become darker after so long, he had indeed become much stronger. Although he was from the Bei family, he also chose to join Yuxu New City. He didn't care much about these things, and now he urgently needed a place to break through. The Killen was going on strike! Exclamation mark. So, he really couldn't delay any longer. As for the totem, Lingling and Mo Fan should be progressing smoothly now, and he didn't need to worry about anything. After arriving at a quiet place in the back mountain, where the black snake was, Tang Mao gave Apis, Zunv, Yangji and Zara Fengji freedom. Let them come out. Apis looked at Tang Mao, full of displeasure. Since returning to China, she has been in the contract space for more and more days. How can this treat her as a person? Well, although she is not a person, this feeling of being locked up is still extremely uncomfortable. Okay, you guys go play, but don't make trouble, otherwise you will be confined for a month. Tang Mao then looked at Apis and said, especially you. After coming back, the little snake girl always makes trouble for herself, and it is definitely intentional. If I don't deal with her, I have to warn her. Otherwise, this little snake girl might not even know her last name. Apis snorted, but didn't talk back. After all, this place is really beautiful, and she also wants to walk around. Maybe this will be where she lives for the rest of her life in the future. And the snow girl has no interest in strolling, although this is her own territory. But Muningsu had things to do, and it had nowhere to go. Yanji got Tang Mao's permission, and took Xiao Fengji away directly. Obviously, this little foodie had long wanted to go out and have fun. PS. Busy. Will go home on 15 to 6. Please bear with me. Chapter 571. No wonder Tang Mao is so arrogant. Seeing the snow girl floating here without any intention of moving, Apis was about to let it take her around when she suddenly felt a breath of fear that made her a little scared? Although she didn't know what it was, her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. The snow girl also felt the approach of this breath, but compared to the somewhat fearful Apis, it didn't mean to be afraid at all. Instead, it looked very happy. Snow girl, what is this? Apis asked softly. Rumble. Crash. Before the snow girl responded, a huge figure suddenly rose up from the sea not far away. Although there was still a distance of several miles from the sea surface, Apis and the snow girl saw it as soon as the black snake appeared. Apis's first reaction was that there was actually a giant snake in the world, whose bloodline was not inferior to Medusa? Moreover, how could it be here? Isn't this the territory of humans? The most important thing is that Apis didn't understand why the snow girl didn't have any hostility towards it. The higher the bloodline of the creature, the less favorable it should be to humans, right? Hiss, hiss, hiss. The black snake didn't seem to have any hostility, and its huge body came here almost in an instant. Then, it disappeared? Go, go, go away. Don't you see that dad is going to retreat and break through? When Apis was wondering, she suddenly heard Tang Mao speak. She thought it was the snow girl who was doing something, but when she turned around, she saw the snow girl beside her, and she didn't know when she was holding a small snake in her hand. The appearance of this snake. Isn't it the huge giant snake just now? When Apis looked at the black snake also looked at it curiously. Hiss, hiss. The black snake looked at Apis as if asking, who is this? The snow girl briefly introduced that she is currently the boss of their contract space, and Apis looked at the snow girl and asked, what kind of creature is it? Why is it here? The black snake is not a contracted creature, Apis can be sure. At least it is not Tang Mao's contracted creature. In fact, the snow girl only knew that the black snake was the godson of her unscrupulous father, and she didn't know anything else. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The black snake disagreed with the term godson. After all, it has been a creature that has survived for thousands of years. However, it is almost the same. Anyway, Tang Mao is the master of Killin's father. After a brief understanding, Apis understood that it was probably related to the soul demon on Tang Mao's body. Similarly, Apis was even more curious. The top combat power like the black snake was a little brother, so what kind of existence was on him? Tang Mao had already started to attack the Firestar River at this time, and had no time to pay attention to the content of their chat. After Apis knew that in addition to the black snake, there were two other totem beasts like it, he understood why this guy was so arrogant. With the protection of a great demon with the top combat power of the monarch, it is enough to run rampant in this world. Besides, he has 3 of them. As for the power of the black snake, it is not weaker than her elder sister and second sister. I want to go around and see. Do you two want to come with me? After all, they are all demons, and knowing that the black snake is on their side, there is nothing to be afraid of. Even if she encounters other totem beasts with Tang Mao's contract mark, she has nothing to worry about. Of course, it would be better to have 2 guides to point the way. However, the snow girl said that she would wait for her stinky sister to come back with delicious food, and the black snake could not leave here. After all, it is responsible for guarding the mountain. Moreover, why would you leave if you have delicious food? Speaking of which, the cooking skills of the chef in Yuxu town are not bad at all. Generally, only when Tang Mao comes back, he will satisfy its cravings, and no one comes to feed it at other times. There is no way. Others are already panicked just by looking at it. The momentum of this supreme monarch, ordinary people just encounter it, let alone deliver food, even approaching for several miles may not dare. Apathy thought that, as long as she didn't have a bad appetite, she could always eat delicious food. But since she was going to live here in the future, she should get familiar with the place first. Then, she left alone. Apathy, who was very curious about everything here, had been walking around for a whole morning without realizing it. No matter where she was, she could rest for a long time. However, without a guide, she really didn't know where to go. Just when she was thinking about whether to take Yanji out for a walk, she suddenly saw a little arrogant girl that she hated very much. Well, although she didn't like her, she was worried about who to find. In addition, this little arrogant girl had been so competitive with her that day, so she was going to scare her. After Lingling and Emofan investigated the totem beast, they returned to Yugsu town. Of course, Emokili really worked hard for this opportunity to advance, and he was resting now. And she was responsible for informing Tangmao, and then they set off together. But unfortunately, Muningsu told her that Tangmao seemed to have gone to Zuansh and was not in the city. If it wasn't urgent, she would let Lingling wait. What's the matter? Is this urgent? It's just that Lingling likes adventure and excitement. No hurry, she's afraid she'll be sent back to the Magic City again. When she thought about going back to the Magic City and those elementary school students, listening to the magic theory class and demon knowledge that has no nutrition, she still felt that she should be anxious. And then she came to find Tangmao. Humph, little girl, you are really brave enough to walk alone in this mountain forest. Just as Lingling was walking towards the totem black snake, Appa suddenly appeared in front of her with a full of teasing. Lingling just glanced at her and was ready to continue walking towards the place where the black snake was. But Apis didn't see the emotion she wanted, so she was naturally very dissatisfied. This stinky girl is obviously not afraid of her. Immediately, Apis's snake eyes changed, staring at her and said, "Aren't you afraid that I will eat you? Then I advise you to be prepared to be skinned and pulled out." Lingling said without fear. "Are you so sure that he will blame me for a worthless little girl like you?" Although Apis was just trying to scare her, her attitude really made people feel gnashing their teeth. "Forget it, this kind of childish trick won't work on me," Lingling said with a little disdain. "Are you so sure that I won't eat you?" While speaking, Apis had already begun to release her demonic energy. Chapter 572 Lingling is forced to be a tour guide. "Don't release that disgusting smell on you anymore. It's useless to me," Lingling said nonchalantly. "You as a beautiful girl with a special physique, everyone loves her." "Oh, beautiful snake." It's okay that Apis was disliked for the first time, but now she is a monarch level demon, coming to scare a little girl, but she is not afraid. The most important thing is that this little girl is still calm, and she is not pretending. She is really not afraid. Exclamation mark. "What do you mean?" Lingling curled her lips and said with a little disgust, "You want to scare me with this kind of childish trick? Are you so sure that I won't kill you?" Apis asked in confusion. "If you have the intention to kill, Tangmao will definitely suppress you at the first time. And you appeared here well, but he didn't stop you. This is the first reason. Even if he didn't pay attention to you, you could have attacked directly, but you didn't, so you wouldn't touch me, and you didn't dare to touch me. This is the second reason. The last point, the reason why you want to scare me is entirely because I had a quarrel with you a few days ago. However, you should use this kind of idiotic trick less with me in the future, otherwise I will feel that you are stupid and insult this word," Lingling retorted, and Apis was so angry that her little tiger teeth were exposed, as if she wanted to bite her to death. Unfortunately, Lingling was still not afraid, because this was Tangmao's territory. As an ordinary little loli with no strength, she dared to walk alone, naturally because of a very important point. That is Bora, the blood servant of Tangmao. This is also a great monarch. Because Tangmao gave him blood, he didn't need to sleep all the time. Most of the time, he was responsible for the affairs in this city. Whenever Apis took action, Bora would definitely come over at the first time. And she was not without any protection, as a high-level hunter. Although she was not a magician, Lingling had no shortage of high-level magic tools. Even before Tangmao had the Black Dragon magic armor, his magic tools were not as luxurious as Lingling's. "Little girl, take me for a walk." Apis knew that she could not scare Lingling, so she said again. Although Ling Ling was not often here, she was a human being after all, and she must come here often, and she must know more than herself. It was obviously very suitable to let her be a guide. I don't have time, you can go around by yourself. Ling Ling refused directly. That won't work. If you don't take me around today, you can forget about going there. Apathy couldn't hurt her, but no one stopped her from restricting her activities. Little Ling Ling also saw that this dead snake was relying on her today, and it would definitely not work if she didn't take her around. But at the same time, Ling Ling was very curious. Where was Tang Mao? I have something to do with Tang Mao. He is busy with his breakthrough now, and has no time to deal with you. Besides, he has no interest in a malnourished little girl like you. Apathy said again. I'm going back. Upon hearing this, Ling Ling turned around and left. Tang Mao was breaking through. It would be useless for her to go there. She might as well go to the top of the mountain and enjoy the snacks arranged by Munich Su. After all, he was in seclusion to break through. She would just wait for him for a few days and then set off. Even if Ling Ling knew about it, she couldn't catch him back for her. In addition to hunting monsters, bounties, and exploration, snacks were also Ling Ling's favorite. But before she could leave, she was controlled by Apathy. In addition to mind control, Apathy was the best at earth magic. It was quite easy for her to prevent Ling Ling from leaving here. In the end, Ling Ling could only reluctantly take Apathy to wander around the mountains and forests of Yuxi City. Why can I always see some kinge here? Apathy asked. Because this is outside the city, and Ling Ling took Apis to a more remote mountain forest. Suddenly, a very beautiful peach forest appeared in the mountain forest. The special bright color and dreamy beauty of the peach forest attracted Apis at once. Apis asked excitedly, what are these? They are so beautiful. The peach forest continued to the middle of the mountain, and there was a very unique wooden house in the middle of the mountain. Many spiritual green moths stayed on its eaves, in the courtyard, and on the windowsill. After walking for a long time, it was already evening. The green moths were waking up. Their wings were actually very beautiful, not inferior to those butterflies flying in the flowers. The twilight fell, and the peach forest, wooden house, and green moths were also quiet. Can you restrain your snake-like aura? The little creatures in the 8-mile area are scared by you, and dare not move. Ling Ling found that the green moths were hovering, and dared not take off, so she turned around, and glared at Apis unhappily. After all, she was very unhappy. Being caught as a guide for no reason. This damn stupid snake. This is an innate biological deterrence, which has nothing to do with my breath. These little guys are quite sensitive, and many stupid things can't be detected. I like them. Apis said meaningfully. Before Ling Ling could retort, the door of the wooden house there was gently pushed open, and a gentle woman, in plain clothes, walked out slowly from inside. She had a gentle posture and eyes like stars. When she saw Ling Ling standing in the yard, a warm and happy smile immediately appeared on her face. It seems something is wrong. Apis looked at Yushishi, who came out, and immediately felt something was wrong. Similarly, Yushishi, who came out, also noticed Apis. Just as Apis said, this is an innate deterrence. Even if Apis has no hostility, even if she is not a complete moth, she is still a little intimidated by the blood relationship. Fortunately, Apis was standing with Ling Ling. Otherwise, Yushishi would probably not stand here so calmly. These green moths are hers, Ling Ling said in a very calm voice. No wonder, their spirituality comes from a leader. Apis muttered. If there is no leader, these little green moths may not be so peaceful and well behaved. Ling Ling, who is she? Yushishi also asked. A snake spirit from Africa. Hearing this, Ling Ling said to Yushishi directly. Yushishi's mouth twitched slightly. Although she had already sensed that the other party had a terrible breath, she really didn't expect that it was a demon. There was no way. Apis was more like a person than she was. Although Apis didn't like this statement, she also understood that this arrogant little loli was very unhappy, so she didn't bother to argue with her. The most important thing is, what's the point of arguing? It's nothing more than making yourself angry. Chapter 573. Black fire surges to the sky. Then several people entered the house. It was very quiet here. Except for Tang Mao, who came back occasionally. She was usually the only one there. Of course, Yushishi never felt lonely, at least she had the company of these little green moths. When Apis came in, she saw a demon silkworm with a clear white body lying on a small mulberry tree, with a pair of round eyes curiously staring at Apis, a stranger. "It's not afraid of me." Apis also stared at the miniature guy, and said very unexpectedly, "Its level is not lower than yours, okay?" Lingling said with a little disdain. "Oh, it's a totem beast like the black snake?" Apis asked in confusion. Having seen the totem beasts here, coupled with the special ancient natural spirit emanating from it, Apis reacted. After saying this, Yushishi paused slightly, and was even more alert. She didn't understand how the other party knew about the totem. "It seems that you have seen the black snake." Lingling didn't feel strange. After all, Tangmao broke through with a black snake, and she came from there, and knew some people. It was normal. "I have seen it. So, do you think this little guy needs to be afraid of you? It is a creature of the same age as the black snake," Lingling said again. Chuckles Ichi. The fearless little moon silkworm had already crawled onto her palm at this time, and it seemed that it liked it here. Such small creatures full of spiritual energy actually have a kind of foreknowledge of dangers in nature. So many times, when Apis stepped into an environment, some small creatures with such sensitive abilities would be frightened. What Apis didn't expect was that this little moon silkworm could clearly sense the breath of Medusa, but it was very brave to crawl onto her hand. Was it really not afraid that she would suck all its spiritual energy? However, she soon thought of the contract on her body. It turned out that this little guy was not afraid of her, but like Lingling, he was sure that she would not hurt it! Exclamation mark. However, she did not mean to hurt it. After all, she still likes these little things. Soon, Apis found that there were many small green silkworms in the house besides the little moon silkworm. Although these small green silkworms were not as noble as the little moon silkworm, they were also some extraordinary little creatures. Seeing that the moon moth phoenix was not afraid of Apis, and she had no intention of hurting her at all, Yushishi let down her guard and introduced the special features of these little lives to her. After Apis learned from Yushishi that these small green silkworms were the green moths outside, she said eagerly, "Then can I raise a few?" "If you like, of course," Yushishi responded. Although she didn't know what Apis was now, since she didn't do anything to the moon moth phoenix, the moon moth phoenix was not afraid of her actions, so she didn't worry about anything. After seeing Yushishi agreed, Apis laughed happily. There are also many strange pupae in the desert, but most of them are ugly and cruel after growing up, which is very different from these little spirit moths. Apis's heart is still that of a girl. She prefers these clean and beautiful little elves. After Yushishi agreed, Apis selected a few of her favorite little silkworms and packed them in a wooden box. Her cautious look was no different from that of a little girl who had just received a gift. Remember to leave a hole in the box after covering them with mulberry leaves. I doubt whether these precious little silkworms can survive more than 3 days in your hands. Lingling glanced at Apis, who was smiling like a mentally retarded person, and said lightly, "I will definitely keep them alive longer than you." Apis retorted without giving in. In fact, just now, Apis thought that Lingling, this little girl, was not so annoying. At least she liked the place she brought herself to. But who knew that the good impression did not last for a few minutes before she was retorted. Sure enough, this arrogant little loli was born unpleasant. Lingling snorted lightly. Apis also snorted. Then, the two women parted ways at Yushishi's residence. Apis returned to where Tangmao was. Lingling went to the villa area of Yugsu town. Yushishi looked at the two little girls leaving and wondered, are they not good girlfriends? On the other side, at the border guarded by the black snake, the originally clear and cool sky, I don't know when it started, it seemed to have turned into purgatory. This area of more than 10 miles is extremely hot, and the green plants planted nearby have turned to ashes at this moment. Fortunately, the snow girl is the darling of the ice element, and is at the monarch level. With the cooperation of the black snake, she was not affected at all. Looking at Tangmao, whose fire attribute power is constantly increasing, the snow girl whimpered with some worry. It seems that she wants to know how Tangmao is doing. It's a pity that the greedy Yanji hasn't come back yet. This is a breakthrough in the fire system. It can't get into Tangmao's body to help, so it can only choose to wait here stupidly. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The black snake was also unclear about what happened and didn't know when this fire energy would become so huge. Boom! Just when it was confused, a black and blue flame suddenly burned on Tang Mao's body. In another moment, a huge figure appeared behind Tang Mao. The snow girl was not unfamiliar with this figure, because wasn't this the Kingluan fire phoenix seen in the ancient king's underground palace? At the beginning, it seemed to have cooled down, and the only remaining flame was absorbed by the Killin, and finally condensed into soul fire for Tang Mao. But why did it appear again now? Question mark. The black and blue flame soared into the sky. I don't know when the sky has begun to change. Even the entire Yuxunu city and the entire Phenio city have noticed the changes here. At this time, Apis, who just came over, was also slightly stunned after seeing this black and blue fire wave. Then, she put away her little cute and rushed to where Tang Mao was. Because this fire wave broke out from him, she needs to figure out what happened. At the same time, many people in Yuxu town also looked over there. Many people here were just ordinary members, and they didn't know that there was a black snake there. Now that there was a wave of fire rising into the sky, everyone thought that a sea monster was attacking. However, they were puzzled. What kind of sea monster could master the power of this level of fire? Question mark. Chapter 574 Fire Seed. And just as the high-level wizards in Yuxu City were rushing over, the flames suddenly dissipated. It was as if they had never appeared. If the residual heat had not completely dissipated, everyone would really think that it was an illusion? Question mark. After Tang Mao opened his eyes, he looked at Apis, Zuanshan and Zunu who were staring at him, and asked in confusion, "Why are you looking at me like that? What happened to you just now?" Apis, who had just come over, listened to Zunu's story, but before she could finish understanding, the flames emanating from Tang Mao disappeared. Tang Mao was about to explain, but suddenly a breeze blew, and then Muningsu appeared here. What happened here? Muningsu looked at the place, as if it had been hit by a fire, and then looked at Tang Mao and said, "Did you create the flame just now?" "I was breaking through just now, but the energy was quite large. Not only did I break through the super level of the fire system, but the Bloluin fire seemed to have been completed, because of the power of the Black Dragon Emperor." Tang Mao looked at Muningsu and Apis, and continued to explain. He did not expect that the soul fire that was originally formed by the residual soul would be directly completed into the heavenly seed fire with the help of the energy of the dragon flame, after obtaining the dragon source power of the Black Dragon Emperor! Exclamation mark. Originally, after the fusion with Little Flame Princess, his 4 soul fires were already comparable to the heavenly seed fire. Now, even if they are not combined, he already has the heavenly seed fire. If they are combined, it is really hard to imagine whether the magic output of this fire system will surpass the thunder system? Question mark. After all, after the fire magic was fused with Flame Princess at the beginning, it was not much worse than the thunder system in terms of destructive power. Even if the single unit was not as powerful as the thunder system, if it is fused now, I'm afraid that 1 plus 1 will completely surpass 2. Apis and Muningsu felt that it was unreal. When did the heaven seed become the same as cabbage? Tang Mao's thunder element is already a heaven seed, and his shadow element and ice element are not the special powers of the soul element. Now the fire element is also a heaven seed? Question mark. Moreover, the 3 super level magics of thunder, wind, and fire have already reached the state of high level perfection. It can be said that with his destructive power now, as long as he does not encounter a chaos mage with full super level cultivation, or a mage with famous defense and some old monsters from various families, he is already a top existence in the super level stage. Even though his super level of each element is only 1 level. For some middle level monarchs of demons, even with the oppression of the domain, it is still not enough. As long as the great monarch does not have the violent attributes of thunder and fire that can suppress him, he still has no way to deal with him. Of course, this is just his conservative guess. As for how he is in actual combat, it is not clear. Anyway, in short, he is very strong. I haven't been able to break through yet, but you have already broken through 3 super classes. Muningsu felt a little upset, and said in confusion, "Your ice crystal breaking bow is your way to super class." I think you should know better than me how to break through. The things in Yuxu Town can be left to Mulin Sheng and your father. Just go and break through. Tang Mao consoled. Yeah. Mu Ningxu nodded. In fact, she also wanted to break through. It's just that Yuxu Town is developing too fast, and she has no time to leave here. But the clan has changed to a noble family, and as the current head, she still has to have super class strength. Especially with the arrival of Mu Bei not long ago, he has already found the threshold of super class, and even Zhu Zhaoting has done the same. So how can she, who has been ahead of them for a long time, still stay at the high level? Yuxu Town should indeed be put aside for a while. Apis, how is your strength recovering? After Tang Mao finished talking to Mu Ningxu, he looked at Apis again. Speaking of which, he has already reached the super level of 3 systems. Apis's strength should not be suppressed anymore, right? I still cannot exert the strength of the Great Monarch. At most, I can only use the full strength of the Middle Monarch. Apis looked at Tang Mao with dissatisfaction. Do you think that, just because you have broken through the super level, I can immediately recover my full strength? Tang Mao's mouth twitched slightly. Who can blame him? At this time, the security team that came from Yuxu Town was relieved to see that Tang Mao and Mu Ningxu were here. Although Mu Ningxu had already explained that they didn't need to protect this place. However, if something happened here, they would still be very scared. Even though they knew that there were some dangers here, they still came here. There is no way. Today's Yuxu Town is not the original Yuxu Town. If it is not counted in Phenio City, it is already a big city. And it is precisely because of the addition of Yuxu New Town in the mountainous area of Phenio City that the safety of the entire city has increased by many times. With the Black Snake, the Tyrant and the Moths of the Moon Phoenix guarding the 3 places, the burden of the entire Phenio City has been reduced. Therefore, those who work in Yuxu New City not only have no dangerous work, but also can enjoy the welfare benefits here comfortably. The most important thing is that once they really become a noble family, they will almost soar to the sky. In the future, a lot of money and a lot of girls, won't they fall into their arms one by one? In this case, can they not pay? Question mark? In fact, if Tang Mao is willing, he can now get the identity of a member of parliament. After all, he has contributed to the catastrophe of the ancient capital, the rise of the coastline, and the affairs of the Biyuan land. And he has contributed a lot. The most important thing is that, since China has ranked first in the international rankings this year, the military magicians who guard the border have also received a lot of resources. Just for these points, his reputation is no weaker than any member of parliament. However, Tang Mao, who likes to act spontaneously, knows very well that he is not that kind of material and can't take this job at all. Otherwise, let alone whether his strength can continue to improve rapidly, just the daily intrigue is really tiring. The rise of a family is nothing to many families and clans. After all, in the 5,000-year history of China, there have been too many ups and downs of families. Even the big clans such as the Mu family and the Zhao family have not been passed down. However, if the new family rises and enters politics at the same time, it will obviously make countless enemies for no reason. After all, what he will offend at that time is not the interests of the families in front of him. He is not arrogant enough to think that he can resist the targeting of a country's families by himself. Chapter 575, Rewards and Punishments. Even with the help of the totem, even with the devil's trump card, once there is a real friction, if he can't destroy them all in one move, then he will probably be subject to their joint sanctions in the end. At that time, let alone Xiao Zheng, the great speaker, even several military leaders can't protect him at all. But, even if he is not as good as Zheng, this is a private territory. If the situation continues to develop in this way, the Tang family will definitely have a place in the country in the future. It is also because of this, that no matter whether it is the newly recruited mages or the mages who have already come here to try their luck, now each of them is loyally dedicating their own lives to Yuxu New City. After all, as long as they work harder, their future generations will have the opportunity to get more resources and even have the opportunity to surpass them in the future. Isn't it for a future generation? And the future generations are getting better and better. Isn't it a goal for everyone to strive for? It's okay here, you all go back. After you go back, everyone who came here today will be credited with a merit. Muningsu said as she looked at the security team members who came. Of course, although it was okay, Muningsu would not ask them to make a trip just because they could come here at the first time. This place was no longer within their scope of work, but they still came, which was enough. Although not all security mages came, as long as they came here at the first time, they should be rewarded. Tang Mao also agreed with Muningsu's approach. After all, who would work hard for you if you wanted the horse to run faster, but didn't want to feed it grass? Even if they ran, they would definitely complain and move slowly. Of course, even if they were not rewarded, it would not matter, but giving them a small merit would not be a big loss. If they were happy and willing to work hard, wouldn't it be worth it for Tang Mao and Muningsu? Everyone in the security team was extremely excited, and they also mourned for those who did not come. This was like a test. Those who came at the beginning did not know what the result would be, but they came with the idea of being a part of this place, regardless of whether it was dangerous or not. As for those who are afraid of danger and think that it is not the defense here who did not come, or those who have not noticed it, it can only be their own fate. Looking at their happy appearance when they left, they didn't even react to the changes here. It is known that today's incident will make many people who are still wavering regard themselves as a part of this new family. After all, even if they are not the Tang family, they have accompanied the family from the smallest to the end, and their status in the family must be not low. Even the descendants of the main family need to give these elders 3 points of face. Of course, this kind of future matter is not what Tang Mao should care about. Okay, let's go back to. Tang Mao looked at Muningsu and Apis and said, then looked at the black snake and said, big guy, we are leaving first. I'll find some friends to accompany you later. Hiss. The black snake just felt that Tang Mao was just fooling it and didn't buy it at all. But he didn't expect it to buy it at all. After all, he was not sure if he could find an obedient totem beast. Just like Bazaar, if it had not been covered with wounds, it would not have followed him to guard the house. It has been thousands of years, and the totem also has a temper. After returning to the residence, Tang Mao took Muningsu back to the house. As for Apis and the others, they were naturally free in their own territory. Of course, after having fun with Muningsu, he did not forget to take out the burning evil eye. Of course, this was not a gift for Muningsu. After all, the real owner of this place was himself, not Muningsu. So, it was a bit too much to say that it was a gift. Muningsu looked at the things Tang Mao took out in confusion, a little confused. Giving this thing afterwards, what was going on? Question mark? It's the burning evil eye. I got it from the Sunset Temple in Cairo. It's a treasure. It can release a special light that covers an area and causes a skin burning effect on them. I haven't studied how to use it specifically yet. I think it can play a good role if it is placed in some specific places in Ryuksu New City. Tang Mao continued to explain. How powerful is it? Muningsu asked. Tang Mao explained again. It's very strong. If you stay in it for too long, commander level creatures and high level mages will be burned by this evil light. There are some islands near us. Although there is the deterrence of Bazaar, there will still be small groups of sea monsters attacking. There are many rich minerals on them. These are one of the main sources of income for Ryuksu New City, but these islands are not in the Anji. There are always some marine creatures crawling to these mineral islands one after another. It often requires a large number of armed forces to ensure the safe transportation of these materials. If this burning evil eye is really that effective, it can be used to drive away those endless island invaders. Muningsu's eyes lit up. There are endless creatures in the ocean, and the island invaders are destroyers that appear when the tide comes. The rise in sea level has caused many islands to be farther away from the safe world and more dangerous. The island mineral veins have been occupied a lot. The reason why Ryuksu New City has not been occupied is entirely because Bakshar is here. But this lazy turtle doesn't care about the attack of several batches of sea monsters. Of course, when Tang Mao is there, it will still work seriously. But if he is not there, and there are not a large number of sea monsters attacking, this dog thing can't be commanded at all. But in fact, it is understandable to think about it. After all, Bakshar is not a totem beast like the black snake that has always lived with humans. It is already very good that it did not attack humans. and the demons also have a very large demand for mineral veins, so places like Jinjiao Island are often more like a small battlefield, and the war between small-scale demons and gods is continuous. Of course, if a large number of sea monsters attack, that damn turtle Bazaar will not sit idly by. Tang Mao said, okay, you should just focus on breaking through your own super level, and leave the rest to them. Hearing this, Muningsu nodded and replied, I understand. She really needed to advance to her super level, and this ice crystal breaking bow was one of the biggest helpers. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.